What if today was the day your life changed forever? What if you finally unlocked the secret to unshakable, lasting happiness? Are you tired of chasing moments of joy, only to feel empty again? Have you wondered why so many seem happy on the outside but lost within? Today isn't just another video, it's the start of a new chapter. A chapter where you'll discover ancient wisdom that leads to true, lasting contentment. The Stoics understood something profound. Happiness isn't about what you have or what happens to you. It's about mastering your mind, emotions, and perspective. This isn't surface-level happiness, it's deep, meaningful, and resilient. The kind that carries you through challenges and makes you truly feel alive. By the end of this guide, you'll have the tools to transform your perspective and take control of your happiness for good. Are you ready? Let's begin. Number 1. Distinguish between what's up to you and what isn't. Here's a hard truth: you're not in control of everything. And that's okay. One of the most liberating ideas in Stoic philosophy is understanding what's within your power and what isn't. Seriously, take a second and let that sink in. Most of us spend so much time tangled up in things that are completely outside our sphere of control, and it's exhausting. But once you get this concept, it's like a weight lifts off your shoulders. So, how do you know what's up to you? Let's break it down. The Stoics say that your thoughts, choices, and actions are within your control. That's your turf. Everything else, other people's opinions, random events, the weather, is not. It's like being in charge of a garden. You can decide what to plant, how often to water, and how much sunlight the plants get. But you can't control the rain or whether a squirrel decides to dig up your tulips. Trying to micromanage those external factors? That's a fast track to frustration. But here's where it gets tricky. Sometimes, life blurs the lines, and we start obsessing over stuff we think we can control but really can't. Maybe you keep replaying a conversation in your head, thinking you could have said something differently to change the outcome. Guess what? That moment is gone, and so is your chance to rewrite it. The only thing you can control now is how you respond and what you learn from it. Anything beyond that is just wasted energy. It's also important to note that knowing what's in your control doesn't mean you stop caring about the things that aren't. It's not about shrugging and saying, "Oh well, not my problem." Instead, it's about focusing your energy on what truly matters and where you can make an impact. Think about it like this: if you're stuck in traffic, you can't control how fast the cars around you move, but you can control whether you sit there fuming or use the time to listen to your favorite podcast. One choice leaves you stressed, the other? Relaxed and maybe even a little smarter. The thing is, our brains love to trick us into thinking we can control more than we actually can. It's a survival mechanism, in a way. If we feel like we're in charge, we feel safer. But life doesn't play by those rules. It's unpredictable, chaotic, and sometimes downright unfair. The Stoics didn't deny that, they embraced it. Instead of fighting the chaos, they worked on building inner peace by focusing only on what they could influence. This mindset shift takes practice, though. You don't wake up one day magically immune to frustration or anxiety over things outside your control. It's a daily effort, like working out a mental muscle. When something stressful happens, pause and ask yourself, is this up to me? If the answer is no, let it go. Sounds simple, but it's not always easy. Your mind will resist. It'll want to grab on, to fixate. That's okay. Just gently remind yourself to focus elsewhere. When you start to live this way, something incredible happens. You free up mental and emotional space. Instead of being consumed by worry or anger over things you can't change, you channel that energy into things you can: your goals, your habits, your relationships. It's like decluttering your mind. Suddenly, everything feels lighter, clearer. And here's the best part: this isn't about giving up or being passive. It's about being smart with your energy. The more you focus on what's within your power, the more empowered you actually become. Life might still throw curveballs, but they don't knock you off balance as much. You're anchored in something steady, your own ability to choose your response. So, the next time life feels overwhelming, remember this: you don't have to carry it all. Figure out what's yours to hold and what isn't. Then, let go of the rest. Not with bitterness, but with grace. It's not defeat, it's wisdom. Number 2, view life as cyclical, with room for renewal and recovery. Life isn't some straight, unbroken line we're all supposed to follow. It's more like a loop, a series of seasons that ebb and flow, rise and fall. But here's the thing: most of us are stuck thinking it's all about constant growth, about moving up and never slowing down. That's exhausting, isn't it? What if instead, you saw life as a cycle, full of moments to build, moments to pause, and moments to start fresh? It's not about forcing yourself to be on all the time, it's about embracing the rhythm of things. Think of life like breathing. There's the inhale, full of action and energy, and the exhale, the release, the calm. Both are necessary. Imagine trying to inhale forever, eventually, you'd suffocate. Yet, so many of us live that way, always pushing, always striving, never giving ourselves the grace to exhale, to rest. The Stoics got this. They understood that life has seasons, times for hustle and times for healing, times to push forward and times to sit back and take stock. Now, here's the kicker: when you truly accept this cyclical nature, you stop panicking when things don't go your way. You realize that a downturn isn't the end, it's just part of the process. Think of winter. It's cold, it's tough, and yet it's essential. Trees lose their leaves not because they've failed, but because they're preparing for renewal. In the same way, when life feels barren or you're in a slump, it's not the end of the world. It's a signal that maybe, just maybe, it's time to rest and regroup. But we fight this, don't we? We resist the quiet moments, the pauses, the slow periods. We tell ourselves we should be doing more, achieving more, proving more. And in doing so, we miss out on the beauty of renewal. Because renewal requires space. It needs you to let go of what's not serving you, to shed the old so the new can grow. That's hard to do when you're gripping life so tightly, trying to force it into some linear progression. When you start seeing life as a cycle, you also get better at riding out the tough times. Because here's the thing: bad moments don't last forever. They can't. Just like summer eventually fades into autumn, the challenges you're facing will shift too. But you've got to let them. You've got to trust the process. That's not to say you sit back and do nothing, but rather, you act with the understanding that not everything is in your control, and that's okay. Another cool part of this perspective? It frees you from burnout. If you know a winter in your life is just around the corner, you give yourself permission to slow down before you crash. You stop beating yourself up for needing rest, because rest is part of the cycle. It's not weakness. It's wisdom. And when spring comes again, and you'll be ready to bloom, refreshed and renewed. This cyclical view also helps with perspective. When you're in a tough spot, you can step back and remind yourself, this is just one part of the journey. It doesn't define you. You're not stuck here forever. And when things are good, you learn to savor them without clinging too tightly, knowing that change is inevitable, but that's not something to fear, it's what keeps life dynamic and alive. So, what does all this mean for you? It means letting go of the pressure to always have it together. It means trusting that even in the hardest moments, there's a purpose, a rhythm, a flow. And it means giving yourself permission to rest, to recover, to let life come full circle. Because when you stop fighting the natural cycles, you stop forcing life, and that's where true happiness begins. Number 3, embrace the present moment. It's funny how life always seems to be happening somewhere else, doesn't it? Either in the hazy mist of what's already passed or the endless what-ifs of what's to come. But the Stoics had this incredible knack for stripping away all that noise, cutting through the mental chatter, and saying, hey, the only thing that's real is right now. Why not give it your full attention? Think about it. The present moment is the only thing you truly have. The past? Gone. The future? Just a guess, really. But this very second? This inhale, this exhale, it's yours, completely and utterly. And yet, so often, we let it slip by unnoticed, chasing after ghosts or worrying about shadows. The Stoics weren't about letting life slip through their fingers. They believed in grounding yourself here and now, fully experiencing what's in front of you without judgment or unnecessary attachment. And no, it's not about ignoring your goals or abandoning your ambitions. It's about realizing that all those dreams are built in the now, one moment at a time. Life isn't happening later, it's unfolding in real time. Now, here's the kicker: embracing the present doesn't mean forcing yourself to love every second. Let's be real, some moments suck. You can't sugarcoat that. But even in the not-so-great ones, there's value if you're willing to look. The Stoics taught that life is a mix of highs and lows, and resisting the lows only makes them hit harder. When you stop trying to dodge the bad and cling to the good, you free yourself to experience life as it is, raw, unfiltered, and real. Here's a thought experiment for you. How often do you pause and just be? Not scroll through your phone, not plan your next move, not replay old conversations in your head, just exist? It sounds simple, but it's deceptively hard. We've gotten so used to multitasking and overthinking that just sitting quietly can feel almost rebellious. Yet, in those quiet, undistracted moments, you'll find something incredible: clarity. You might even notice things you've overlooked: a faint breeze, the way sunlight dances on a surface, or the sheer rhythm of your breath. Being present also means letting go of the need to control everything. And boy, isn't that a tough one? We all want life to go according to plan, but newsflash, it rarely does. The Stoics knew that clinging to control is like trying to hold water in your hands. It's futile and exhausting. Instead, they urged us to flow with life, to meet it as it comes, with grace and acceptance. You don't have to like it, but you can choose not to resist it. That's where your power lies. And let's talk about distractions, those sneaky little thieves of the present. Every ping from your phone, every random worry that pops into your head, they pull you away from the now. The Stoics might not have had smartphones, but they understood distractions well. They believed in simplifying life, in cutting out the unnecessary to make room for what truly matters. If something doesn't serve your growth or bring you peace, why give it your energy? But don't beat yourself up if being present doesn't come naturally at first. It's a practice, not a one-and-done deal. Start small. Next time you're eating, actually taste your food. When you're talking to someone, really listen. Notice how your body feels, how the air smells, how your thoughts wander. It's in these tiny acts of mindfulness that you start to reclaim the moment. The present isn't flashy. It doesn't shout for your attention like the past or the future. But it's here, quietly waiting for you to notice. And when you do, you'll realize something amazing. Life isn't something you need to chase or force. It's already happening, right here, right now, in this very moment. Number 4, strive for clear judgment and true understanding. Life is noisy. Our minds? Even noisier. Thoughts buzz around like flies, dragging in assumptions, fears, and half-baked conclusions. And in all that mental chaos, it's easy to lose track of what's real. The Stoics had a remedy for this: clear judgment and true understanding. Sounds lofty, but it's not some mystical, out-of-reach concept. It's about stripping away the fluff and seeing things as they are, not as we wish they were, or fear they might be. Clear judgment begins with asking yourself, am I reacting to the world, or to the story I'm telling myself about the world? That's a tough one, isn't it? We all do it. Something happens, and before we even take a second to really look at it, our minds are off to the races, spinning a narrative. It's like seeing a shadow on the wall and immediately assuming there's a monster lurking around the corner. But often, it's just a shadow, nothing more, nothing less. So how do you cut through the noise? Start with a pause. When emotions are running high, or something feels overwhelming, just stop for a moment. Breathe. Let the dust settle. Then, look at the situation with fresh eyes. What's actually happening here? What do you know for sure, without guessing or assuming? That pause, that little bit of distance, is where clarity starts to emerge. The Stoics also believed that clear judgment requires honesty, brutal honesty, if we're being real. It's not enough to just see things as they are, you have to be willing to confront uncomfortable truths. That means admitting when you're wrong, recognizing your own biases, and questioning beliefs you've held onto for years. Yeah, it's not fun. But it's necessary. You can't understand the world, or yourself, if you're too busy clinging to illusions. And let's not forget about true understanding. This isn't just about collecting facts or being smart. It's deeper than that. It's about wisdom, knowing how things connect, why they matter, and what they mean in the grand scheme of life. It's about digging below the surface and not settling for easy answers. True understanding isn't flashy or quick. It takes time, effort, and a willingness to be humbled by how much you don't know. Here's the kicker, though. True understanding also means accepting that some things will never make perfect sense. Life is messy, unpredictable, and sometimes downright weird. You're not going to figure it all out, and that's okay. The Stoics didn't aim for certainty, they aimed for perspective. They knew that clear judgment and true understanding are about seeing enough to navigate wisely, not seeing everything. And let's talk about how this ties into happiness. When your judgment is clouded by emotions, biases, or false assumptions, you suffer. You make decisions that don't serve you, react to things that don't matter, and get stuck in mental loops that drain your energy. But when you strive for clarity and understanding, something shifts. You become less reactive, more grounded. You stop getting yanked around by every little thing. Instead, you act with intention and purpose. It's worth mentioning that this isn't about becoming a robot, devoid of emotions. The Stoics weren't anti-feeling. They just believed that emotions shouldn't drive the bus. Clear judgment means recognizing your emotions, acknowledging them, and then deciding what to do with them. True understanding means knowing when to follow your heart and when to let your head take the lead. The beauty of this principle is its simplicity. It's not about memorizing complex philosophies or mastering intricate techniques. It's about slowing down, paying attention, and thinking deeply. It's about being curious, questioning everything, including yourself, and staying open to what you find. In the end, striving for clear judgment and true understanding isn't a destination. It's a practice, a way of approaching life. Some days, you'll get it right. Other days, you'll miss the mark. That's fine. What matters is that you keep showing up, keep asking questions, and keep peeling back the layers to see what's really there. Because the closer you get to the truth, the freer and happier you'll be. Number 5, align your actions with your nature and community. You ever feel like you're running a race you didn't sign up for? Like you're chasing something, but deep down, you're not even sure if it's what you really want? That's the trap so many of us fall into. We get caught up in someone else's version of success, trying to fit ourselves into a mold that doesn't feel right. And you know what? It's exhausting. The Stoics had a better way: align your actions with your true nature and the needs of your community. let's break that down. First, your true nature. What does that even mean? It's about being honest with yourself, understanding what really drives you. Not what should drive you or what you've been told is important, but what actually lights you up. For some, it's creating, building, or solving problems. For others, it's connecting, nurturing, or exploring. The point is, we're all wired differently, and that's okay. The Stoics believed we each have a role to play in the grand tapestry of life, and forcing yourself into a role that doesn't fit? That's a one-way ticket to misery. But here's the thing, finding your nature isn't always easy. It takes a bit of soul-searching, a willingness to strip away all the noise and expectations. It's about asking, what feels right for me? Not what feels easy or what looks good on paper, but what feels right. And once you figure that out, aligning your actions with it becomes a lot clearer. You stop wasting energy on things that don't matter and start focusing on what truly resonates with who you are. Now, let's talk about the second part, your community. Humans aren't meant to live in isolation. We're wired to connect, to contribute, to be part of something bigger than ourselves. But in today's hyper-individualistic world, it's easy to forget that. We're so focused on doing me that we forget the joy that comes from lifting others up, from working together toward a common goal. The Stoics knew this too. They believed we're all interconnected, like the limbs of a single body. When one part thrives, the whole thrives. So, aligning your actions with your community doesn't mean losing yourself or sacrificing your individuality. It means finding a balance. It's about asking, how can I use my strengths, my nature, to contribute to the world around me? Maybe it's through your work, your relationships, or even the small, everyday choices you make. It's not about grand gestures, it's about showing up in a way that feels authentic and meaningful. And here's where it all comes together. When you align your actions with both your nature and your community, something magical happens. You feel a sense of purpose, a sense of flow. You're no longer fighting against the current because you're moving in a way that feels natural, that feels right. Life stops feeling like a series of disconnected tasks and starts feeling like a cohesive story, one where you play a part that's uniquely yours. Of course, this doesn't mean it'll always be easy. There will be times when the pull of external pressures is strong, when you're tempted to stray from your path. That's normal. The key is to come back to yourself, to remember why you're doing what you're doing and who you're doing it for. And when you do, you'll find that life has a way of falling into place, not because you're forcing it, but because you're in harmony with it. So, stop chasing someone else's dream. Stop trying to force yourself into roles that don't fit. Instead, take a step back. Listen to yourself. Look around. And ask, how can I live in a way that honors who I am and uplifts the people around me? Because when you do that, when you align your actions with your nature and your community, you'll discover a kind of happiness that no amount of forcing could ever bring. Number 6. View life as cyclical, with room for renewal and recovery. Life isn't a straight line. It's not this endless, predictable march from point A to point B. No, life is messy, twisting, turning, and looping back on itself. It's a cycle, a series of ebbs and flows, ups and downs, beginnings and endings. The Stoics knew this well, and they embraced it with open arms. They saw life's cyclical nature not as something to resist, but as something to understand, accept, and even celebrate. Think of it this way, the natural world is built on cycles. Day turns to night, seasons shift, tides rise and fall. Nothing in nature stays static. It's all movement, change, renewal. And guess what? You're no different. Your life moves in cycles too, times of growth, times of rest, moments of clarity, stretches of confusion. It's not a flaw in the system, it is the system. Here's the thing, when you try to force life to be linear, it's like swimming against the current. Exhausting, frustrating, and ultimately pointless. You end up fighting against the natural rhythm of things, and for what? To feel in control? To stick to some self-imposed timeline? The Stoics would tell you to pause, take a breath, and ask yourself if all that forcing is really worth it. The beauty of viewing life as cyclical is that it gives you permission to let go. It allows you to step back and say, okay, this is where I am right now, and that's okay. You're not meant to be in full bloom all the time. Sometimes, you're in a season of planting seeds. Other times, you're lying fallow, waiting, recovering. And those quiet, seemingly unproductive moments, they're just as important as the bursts of energy and success. It's in these pauses, the lulls, the down cycles, that real renewal happens. Think of it as a reset, a chance to gather strength for what's next. But here's the catch, you have to allow it. You can't beat yourself up for not being on all the time. The Stoics believed in self-compassion, in understanding that rest and recovery are not weaknesses. They're necessities. Cycles also teach you that nothing lasts forever, not the good, not the bad. When you're riding high, it's easy to feel invincible, like the good times will never end. But the Stoics remind us to stay grounded, to remember that life's wheel keeps turning. Conversely, when you're in the thick of a tough time, it can feel endless, like the light will never come back. But it does. It always does. The Stoics would nod knowingly and say, this too shall pass. There's a quiet power in accepting life's cyclical nature. It frees you from the pressure to constantly chase happiness or avoid pain. Instead, you start to see both as part of the same flow, two sides of the same coin. Joy and sorrow, success and failure, they all feed into each other, creating a richer, fuller experience of life. This perspective also brings a kind of patience. When you know life moves in cycles, you stop rushing. You stop forcing things to happen before their time. You start to trust the process, to let things unfold at their own pace. It's not about being passive or giving up, it's about working with life, not against it. And here's where it gets interesting. When you align yourself with life's cycles, you start to notice the rhythm of your own being. Your energy levels, your moods, your creativity, they all have their own patterns. Learning to honor these rhythms is one of the greatest gifts you can give yourself. It's a way of living that feels less like a struggle and more like a dance. So, instead of pushing for constant progress, take a step back. Observe where you are in your cycle. Are you in a season of growth, or are you in need of rest? Wherever you are, know that it's exactly where you're meant to be. Life isn't about forcing yourself to stay in one phase or another. It's about moving with the current, trusting that renewal and recovery are built into the design. And that, my friend, is where true happiness begins. Number 7, visualize potential setbacks to prepare mentally. Life's never a straight line, is it? You've got your plans all lined up, your goals crystal clear, and then, bam, something goes sideways. It's not a matter of if things will go wrong, but when. That's just how life works. The Stoics knew this and had a practice that's equal parts sobering and empowering, visualizing setbacks. It's not about being pessimistic or dwelling on negativity. It's about mentally rehearsing life's curveballs so you're ready when they inevitably come flying at you. Imagine this, you're on a path, and you know there are rocks, potholes, and branches ahead. Wouldn't it be smarter to think about how you'll handle them before you start walking? That's the idea here. The Stoics called it premeditatio malorum, which translates to the premeditation of evils. Fancy name, but the concept is simple. Think about what could go wrong, not to scare yourself, but to make sure you're prepared. Let's break it down. Start by picturing your goals or plans. Now, ask yourself, what could realistically derail this? Not in a doom and gloom way, but with a calm, analytical mindset. Picture the hurdles, the delays, the unexpected twists. Maybe you'll encounter resistance, make mistakes, or face rejection. Let those possibilities play out in your mind, one by one. At first, this might feel uncomfortable. Most of us like to focus on the positive, imagining everything working out perfectly. But ignoring setbacks doesn't make them go away. It just leaves you more shocked and unprepared when they show up. When you visualize setbacks, you take back control. You go from being caught off guard to being the person who says, I knew this might happen. Here's what I'll do. The key is to approach this exercise with balance. You're not catastrophizing or expecting failure at every turn. You're simply exploring what-ifs. What if your plans take longer than expected? What if resources run low? What if you face criticism or doubts? Instead of letting these questions paralyze you, let them guide you to solutions. And here's where the magic happens. Once you've imagined the setbacks, think through your responses. If this goes wrong, what's my plan? If I hit this roadblock, how do I pivot? This isn't about trying to predict every single possible scenario. It's about building mental resilience. You're training your mind to stay steady, no matter what. Visualizing setbacks also helps take the sting out of failure. Think about it. When you expect life to be smooth sailing, every wave feels like a disaster. But when you've already prepared yourself for the possibility of choppy waters, you don't panic. You adjust your sails and keep moving forward. There's power in knowing that you're ready for whatever comes. This practice also shifts your mindset. Instead of seeing setbacks as bad or unfair, you start to view them as part of the journey. Challenges become less personal and more neutral, just things to navigate. It's like playing a game. You don't rage quit because an obstacle pops up, you figure out how to beat it. That's the energy Stoic visualization brings to real life. Another benefit? It calms you down. Weird, right? You'd think imagining problems would stress you out, but it actually does the opposite. When you've already considered the worst-case scenario, it stops looming over you. It's no longer this big, scary unknown. You've faced it in your mind, and now you know you can handle it. And let's not forget, setbacks don't just test your plans, they test your character. They're opportunities to practice patience, adaptability, and grit. When you visualize setbacks, you're not just preparing for external challenges, you're strengthening yourself internally. You're building a mindset that says, I've got this, no matter what. So, give it a try. Spend a few minutes each day imagining potential obstacles in your path. Not with dread, but with curiosity and courage. See the setbacks, prepare for them, and then let them go. This isn't about obsessing over what could go wrong, it's about knowing, deep down, that you can handle it when it does. Number 8, love your fate, even the challenges. Loving your fate. It sounds strange, doesn't it? Especially when life throws curveballs your way. Who wants to embrace the tough stuff? The setbacks, the heartbreaks, the moments when nothing seems to go right? It feels almost unnatural, maybe even impossible. But what if it wasn't? What if learning to love your fate, even the ugly, messy parts, was the key to a deeper, unshakable kind of happiness? The Stoics had this idea, this mindset they called amor fati, which means love of fate. Not just accepting what happens, not just tolerating it, but loving it. All of it. The good, the bad, the unexpected, the unfair. They believed everything that happens is part of a larger design, even if you can't see it right now. Sounds idealistic, right? But it's not about blind optimism. It's about shifting your perspective and finding meaning, even in struggle. Let's start with the challenges. Life is full of them, and no matter how much we plan or prepare, we can't avoid them. But here's the thing, Challenges don't exist just to trip you up or make your life miserable. They're there to shape you, to sharpen you, to teach you something. Think about it. Would you ever grow if everything was easy? Would you ever discover your strength if you were never tested? The Stoics saw obstacles not as roadblocks, but as stepping stones. Every challenge is an opportunity to become better, wiser, tougher. And when you approach life that way, something shifts. Instead of saying, "Why me?" you start asking, "What can I learn from this?" Instead of feeling like life is out to get you, you realize it's working with you, pushing you to evolve. That doesn't mean challenges magically stop being hard. They're still tough. They'll still knock the wind out of you sometimes. But when you love your fate, you stop resisting them. You start leaning in, knowing they're part of your story. Now, let's talk about the unpredictable nature of life. We all want control, don't we? We want life to follow our script, to go the way we think it should. But it rarely does. Plans fall apart. Expectations go unmet. It's frustrating, sure, but it's also reality. And fighting reality is like trying to swim upstream in a raging river. You'll exhaust yourself, and you'll never get anywhere. But when you love your fate, you let go of that struggle. You stop trying to control everything and start trusting that things are unfolding as they're meant to. That doesn't mean you stop trying or caring. It means you show up, you give your best, and you let the chips fall where they may. When you do that, you find a kind of freedom. You're no longer trapped by what you think should be happening. You're able to appreciate what is happening, even when it's not what you expected. And here's the wild part, loving your fate doesn't just help you deal with challenges, it makes the good moments even sweeter. When you're not constantly wishing for things to be different, you can fully enjoy the moments of joy and peace and connection. You're not stuck in the past, regretting what went wrong, or in the future, worrying about what might go wrong. You're here, fully present, embracing whatever life is giving you. So, how do you start loving your fate? It's not about flipping a switch or forcing yourself to feel something you don't. It's about practice. It's about catching yourself when you start resisting life and asking, "What's this moment teaching me?" It's about reminding yourself that every twist and turn, every high and low, is part of the bigger picture. And it's about trust, trusting that even when you can't see the whole picture, it's still worth loving. Because when you love your fate, even the challenges, life stops feeling like something you're battling against. It becomes something you're living with, flowing with, growing with. And that's where true happiness begins, not in perfection, but in embracing the perfectly imperfect journey. Number 9. Practice occasional discomfort to build resilience. Let's be real, life is not always a cushy, comfortable ride. No matter how much you try to bubble wrap your existence, discomfort will find its way in. The Stoics, though, they were way ahead of the game. They didn't just accept discomfort, they leaned into it. They saw it as a teacher, a tool to sharpen their minds and strengthen their spirits. And honestly, there's something powerful about choosing a bit of discomfort on your own terms. Think about it. When you voluntarily step out of your comfort zone, even just a little, you send a message to yourself. It says, "I'm tougher than I thought. I can handle this." You don't need to start with grand, Herculean challenges. The Stoics believed in taking small, deliberate steps, tiny nudges that push you just enough to grow but not so much that you feel overwhelmed. It's like building a muscle. Start light, then add weight as you go. But let's get into why this actually works. When you expose yourself to discomfort, you begin to strip away the fear of it. That fear? It's often worse than the discomfort itself. You spend so much time dreading what might happen that you psych yourself out. By stepping into those moments of unease, you prove to yourself that it's not as bad as you imagined. And even if it is bad, you get through it. You endure. You come out the other side a little bit stronger, a little bit wiser. Resilience isn't built in the moments when everything is smooth sailing. It's forged in the storms. But here's the key: you don't have to wait for life to throw chaos your way. The Stoics would say, why not prepare yourself in advance? It's not about becoming a glutton for punishment or constantly seeking hardship. It's about learning to face challenges with grace when they do appear. When you voluntarily practice discomfort, you start to discover something amazing: how much of what you thought you needed, you don't actually need. The Stoics believed in simplicity and self-discipline, not because they wanted to deprive themselves, but because it helped them see what truly mattered. When you strip away the excess, the fluff, the things you cling to out of habit, you gain clarity. You realize your happiness isn't tied to luxuries or conveniences, it comes from within. Here's another layer to this: practicing discomfort makes the comfortable moments sweeter. When you've gone without, even for a little while, you appreciate what you have so much more. It's like resetting your baseline, reminding yourself not to take things for granted. The Stoics weren't about endless suffering, they were about perspective. And a little discomfort here and there? It's a powerful way to shift your perspective. Now, let's address the elephant in the room: it's not fun. Sure, there's a weird kind of satisfaction in pushing yourself, but discomfort is still, well, uncomfortable. And that's the point. Life doesn't promise you endless ease. By embracing that reality and practicing discomfort in small doses, you train yourself to handle whatever comes your way. You build a kind of mental armor, a resilience that can't be shaken by every little challenge. But don't make the mistake of thinking this is about toughness for toughness's sake. The Stoics weren't trying to prove how hardcore they were. It was never about ego. It was about freedom. When you're not ruled by your fear of discomfort, you're free. Free to take risks, free to grow, free to live fully without constantly looking over your shoulder. So start small. Maybe it's skipping a comfort you usually rely on, or doing something you've been avoiding because it feels hard. Whatever it is, lean into it. Notice how it feels, not just the initial awkwardness, but the pride, the strength, the clarity that comes after. Discomfort isn't the enemy. It's a doorway to resilience, to growth, to a deeper sense of peace. And if the Stoics got one thing right, it's that peace doesn't come from running away. It comes from stepping in, fully and boldly, no matter how uncomfortable it might seem. Number 10. Recognize your connection to the universe. You're not an island. You're not floating through life as some solitary, disconnected from everything else. No, you're part of something much, much bigger, woven into the immense fabric of the universe itself. The Stoics knew this and embraced it fully. They believed that true happiness begins when you realize you're not separate from the world around you. You belong here. You're a thread in the vast, intricate tapestry of existence. Let's get real for a second. How often do you stop and think about your place in the grand scheme of things? Probably not often. We're so caught up in our daily dramas, our personal goals, our own little bubbles, that we forget to zoom out. But when you do, when you really take a moment to step back, it's humbling and strangely empowering. You're not just some random speck, you're part of the flow of the cosmos. The Stoics would tell you that everything is interconnected. From the tiniest atom to the most distant star, it's all part of the same whole. You and I? We're not separate from nature or the universe. We are nature. We are the universe. That sounds heavy, but it's also comforting, isn't it? You're not alone in this. You're deeply, intrinsically connected to something infinite and vast. Now, this connection isn't just some feel-good concept. It's practical. Recognizing your link to the universe shifts your perspective on life. Suddenly, the small stuff doesn't feel so overwhelming. The petty arguments, the missed opportunities, the little annoyances, they shrink in comparison to the immensity of existence. you realize there's so much more to life than the narrow lens you've been looking through. And here's the kicker: when you see yourself as part of the whole, your sense of responsibility changes, too. You're not just living for yourself anymore. Your actions ripple outward, affecting everything and everyone around you. Every choice you make, every word you speak, every little thing you do, it all matters. Not in a stressful, carry the weight of the world kind of way, but in a beautiful, you have an impact kind of way. This connection also brings a deep sense of peace. When you align yourself with the natural flow of life, you stop resisting what is. You stop trying to force things to be a certain way or fighting against the inevitable. The Stoics called this living in accordance with nature. It's about accepting the cycles of life, the ups and downs, the changes and transitions. It's about recognizing that just as the seasons change, so does everything else, and that's okay. Think of it this way: the universe is like a massive symphony, and you're one of its instruments. You're not playing solo, you're part of a collective masterpiece. Sometimes, the music is loud and dramatic. Other times, it's soft and serene. Your job isn't to control the whole symphony, it's to play your part, to harmonize with the bigger picture. And when you do, something shifts inside you. You stop feeling so separate, so isolated. You start seeing connections everywhere, in the people you meet, the challenges you face, the beauty of a sunset, the chaos of a storm. It's all part of the same dance, and you're dancing right along with it. This perspective also helps you handle life's difficulties. When things go wrong, it's easy to feel like the universe is out to get you. But when you recognize your connection to the whole, you realize that challenges aren't punishments, they're just part of the flow. They're lessons, opportunities, or simply moments to endure. The universe isn't against you, it's working through you, with you. Ultimately, recognizing your connection to the universe is about humility and awe. It's about realizing that you're small but not insignificant, that you're one piece of a massive puzzle. And when you see yourself this way, life feels a little less heavy, a little more meaningful. You're not here by accident. You're here to play your part, to contribute to the whole, to be part of something bigger than yourself. So, stop trying to force your way through life as if it's all up to you. Trust the symphony. Trust the flow. Trust that you're exactly where you're supposed to be, part of something infinite, eternal, and extraordinary. In the next section, let's go over social habits you should quietly eliminate from your life. Number 1, over-explaining your actions or decisions. Have you ever found yourself in a conversation, tripping over your words trying to explain why you did something? You know, the kind of situation where you catch yourself justifying every little detail about a choice you made, as if you're standing trial. Why do we do that? It's almost like we think our decisions won't count unless we convince everyone else they're valid. Here's the thing: you don't owe people a detailed report for every move you make. Think about it for a second. When you over-explain, you're not just filling the silence, you're handing over the reins of your confidence to someone else. You're saying, "I need you to approve of this." But guess what? You don't. Not everyone deserves a front row seat to your thought process. And honestly, most people don't care as much as you think they do. They're busy with their own lives, their own decisions, and their own overthinking spirals. Now, that's not to say you should shut down every question with a curt "because I said so." Communication is important, sure. But there's a fine line between explaining yourself and over-explaining. One keeps the conversation flowing, while the other starts to feel like you're defending yourself against an invisible jury. It's exhausting, isn't it? Over-explaining often stems from insecurity. You might feel like your decisions aren't good enough, like they need to be dressed up with layers of reasoning to make them palatable to others. But here's the truth: confidence isn't about having everyone agree with you, it's about standing firm even when they don't. When you trust yourself, the need to over-explain shrinks. You start to realize that "I chose this because it felt right for me" is all the explanation you really need. Another downside to over-explaining is that it can dilute your message. The more you talk, the more you risk coming off as unsure, even if you aren't. People might start focusing on the details you're fumbling through rather than the point you're trying to make. It's like trying to pour a glass of water, but you keep spilling because you're pouring too fast and too much. Sometimes less is more. A clear, concise explanation often carries more weight than a rambling one. Let's also talk about the mental toll it takes. Constantly feeling the need to explain yourself is exhausting. It creates this loop where you second-guess everything, wondering if you should have said more, said less, or explained differently. It's a never-ending cycle of self-doubt. And for what? To appease someone else's curiosity or judgment. Your mental energy is a limited resource, spend it wisely. Breaking the habit of over-explaining isn't easy, but it's doable. Start small. The next time someone questions your decision, give a straightforward answer and stop there. Resist the urge to fill the silence with unnecessary details. It might feel awkward at first, silence often does, but you'll survive it. Over time, you'll find that people rarely push for more. And when they do, you can always say, "That's just what felt right for me." Another tip? Get comfortable with being misunderstood. Not everyone will get you, and that's okay. Your worth isn't tied to how well you can explain yourself to others. Sometimes, letting people form their own opinions without spoon-feeding them every detail is a sign of strength. It shows that you're confident enough to let your actions speak for themselves. At its core, this habit is about reclaiming your autonomy. Your decisions are yours to make, and you don't need to dress them up to make them acceptable to others. So, next time you catch yourself spiraling into an over-explanation, pause. Take a deep breath. And remind yourself, you are enough, and so are your choices. Number 2, talking about your plans instead of executing them. Let's be real, talking about your plans feels amazing. You get that little hit of dopamine when you tell someone about your grand vision. Maybe it's the dream of starting a business, running a marathon, or even writing a book. You feel like you're already halfway there because, hey, you've said it out loud. But let's pause for a moment. Has talking ever been a substitute for doing? Not really. In fact, it might even be holding you back. Here's the thing, every time you share your plans, your brain gives you a small reward. It feels satisfying, like progress is being made. But in reality, you've done nothing. Zero. Nada. Instead of channeling your energy into taking real, tangible steps forward, you've spent it on words. The excitement of sharing tricks you into thinking you're making strides when you're just spinning in place. Why does this happen? It's simple. When you talk, you create an illusion of action. You trick not only others but yourself. The feedback you get from sharing, be it a "wow, that sounds awesome," or even just a nod of approval, fools your brain into thinking you've already achieved something. You get the high without the hustle. That's dangerous. It's like eating junk food when you're hungry. It fills you up temporarily, but it doesn't nourish you. Think about it. Plans are fragile in their early stages. They're delicate, like a flickering flame that needs quiet care and focus to grow stronger. When you talk too much about them, you expose them to scrutiny, doubt, or even judgment, sometimes from others, but more often from yourself. And that can snuff them out before they've had a chance to take root. Now, let's look at the other side of the coin, execution. It's messy, unglamorous, and often doesn't come with immediate applause. It's waking up early, staying late, learning through mistakes, and pushing through frustration. It's the hard, unsexy work of taking an idea from your mind and turning it into something real. Execution demands patience, discipline, and focus, qualities that don't thrive in the spotlight of constant chatter. Here's a thought experiment. Imagine keeping your plans to yourself. Picture them as seeds planted deep in the soil, away from the eyes and opinions of the world. Instead of talking, you water them daily with action. A small step here, a tiny improvement there. Nobody knows what you're working on, and that's the beauty of it. Your efforts grow in quiet strength, shielded from the distractions and doubts that come with oversharing. Does this mean you should never tell anyone about your goals? Not at all. But there's a balance. Instead of broadcasting your ambitions to everyone who will listen, confide in a select few who genuinely support you. Let them hold you accountable. Use their energy to fuel your momentum, not to replace it. Most importantly, let your actions do the talking. Let your results speak so loudly that you don't have to say a word. Here's the kicker: the less you talk about your plans, the more mysterious and intriguing you become. People notice your progress without needing explanations. They see the results and wonder how you pulled it off. That's when you realize the power of silent action. It not only brings you closer to your goals, but also earns you a quiet respect that words never could. In the end, talking about your plans might feel good in the moment, but execution is what brings true fulfillment. Silence isn't just golden, it's productive. Keep your plans close to your chest, focus on the work, and let your achievements be the loudest thing about you. Because when it comes down to it, success doesn't need a speech. It needs action. Number 3, assuming others share your values or beliefs. Alright, let's dig into this. Have you ever caught yourself thinking, if I believe this, surely others must too? It's so easy to fall into that trap. We all do it. It's not malicious or even conscious most of the time. It's just a byproduct of how we're wired. Humans crave connection and understanding, so we instinctively project our worldview onto others. But here's the thing, not everyone sees the world through the same lens, and assuming they do can lead to misunderstandings, frustration, and even fractured relationships. Think about it, your values are shaped by countless factors: your upbringing, your experiences, your culture, and maybe even some random moments that left a lasting mark. Now imagine how wildly different someone else's life might be. The values they hold close might be the polar opposite of yours, and neither of you is necessarily right or wrong. It's just different. When you assume others share your beliefs, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. It's like showing up to a potluck with a dish you're sure everyone will love, only to realize no one touches it because their taste buds are tuned to a completely different frequency. Frustrating, isn't it? But here's where it gets tricky. The more deeply held your belief or value is, the harder it becomes to understand how someone else might not see things the same way. It's not just confusing, it can feel personal. How could they not get it, you might think? But the truth is, they don't have to. Now, let's throw a little Stoic philosophy into the mix. Marcus Aurelius, Epictetus, Seneca, they'd all tell you the same thing: focus on what you can control. And you know what you can't control? Other people's minds. Their beliefs, their values, their choices, that's their domain, not yours. When you expect alignment where none exists, you're not just setting yourself up for disappointment, you're also giving up your peace of mind. And honestly, is it worth it? Letting go of this assumption doesn't mean you abandon your own values. Far from it. It's about recognizing that your truths are yours. They guide you, inspire you, and shape your actions. But they're not universal. And that's okay. In fact, it's freeing. When you stop expecting others to think like you, you open yourself up to deeper understanding and richer connections. You might not agree with someone, but you can still respect where they're coming from. You can listen without judgment, even if their perspective is worlds apart from yours. Here's another layer to this: when you assume others share your values, you risk alienating them without even realizing it. Picture this: you're passionately explaining your point of view, assuming the other person is nodding along internally. But what if they're not? What if they're silently disagreeing, feeling unheard, or even judged? That disconnect can quietly grow into a wall, blocking genuine communication. And all because you didn't take a moment to consider, hey, maybe they see things differently. Breaking this habit isn't easy. It takes awareness and effort. It means catching yourself in the act and saying, wait, what if I'm wrong here? What if they don't see it this way at all? It's a mental pause, a reset. Over time, it becomes second nature. And when it does, you'll find your interactions feel lighter, less fraught with tension or unspoken expectations. Ultimately, embracing this idea is about humility. It's about accepting that you're one person in a vast, complicated world, and your way isn't the only way. That's not a bad thing, it's beautiful. It means there's always more to learn, more to understand, more to appreciate in the people around you. So, next time you feel yourself slipping into that assumption, remember, different doesn't mean wrong. It just means different. Number 4, being overly reactive to criticism. Let's be real, criticism stings. Nobody likes to hear that they've fallen short, made a mistake, or could have done something better. It's uncomfortable. It can feel like a spotlight shining directly on your flaws, exposing them to the world. But here's the kicker, the way you handle criticism says a lot more about you than the criticism itself. And if your default mode is to react instantly and emotionally, you might be giving away more power than you realize. When someone criticizes you, your first instinct might be to defend yourself. That's not true, or you don't understand, might fly out of your mouth before you've even processed what was said. It's human. We all want to protect our egos, to shield ourselves from feeling inadequate or judged. But reacting too quickly often turns into overreacting. You snap, argue, or shut down entirely, and suddenly, what could have been a moment of growth becomes a full-blown conflict. Pause for a second. Why does criticism hit so hard? For many of us, it's because we tie our worth to being perfect, or at least to being seen as competent and capable all the time. So, when someone points out a flaw, it feels personal, like they're attacking not just your actions, but your identity. But here's the thing, criticism isn't always about you. Sometimes it's about the other person's perspective, their expectations, or even their mood. Not all feedback is fair or accurate, and not all criticism needs to be internalized. But, and this is important, even the harshest feedback can teach you something. It's all about how you frame it. Instead of reacting emotionally, try stepping back and asking yourself, is there any truth in this? If there is, great. You've just identified an area where you can grow. If there isn't, let it go. Not every comment deserves a reaction, and not every critique warrants a change in you. Now, let's talk about the energy it takes to be overly reactive. It's exhausting. Every time you let criticism push your buttons, you're handing over control of your emotions to someone else. They say something, and boom, you're off, spiraling into defensiveness or anger or self-doubt. It's like being a puppet, with the strings pulled by anyone who decides to voice an opinion about you. Do you really want to live like that? Probably not. When you're reactive, you're not just exhausting yourself, you're also building a reputation. People start to see you as someone who can't handle feedback, someone who's touchy or easily offended. That's not the vibe you want to give off. Instead, aim for calm, collected, and confident. When you respond to criticism thoughtfully, rather than reacting impulsively, you come across as someone who's grounded and self-assured. And let's be honest, that's way more attractive than being the person who flies off the handle every time someone offers a critique. So, how do you break the habit? Start by slowing down. When you hear criticism, resist the urge to jump in with a rebuttal or explanation. Take a breath. Let the words settle. If you're unsure how to respond, it's okay to say, "I'll think about that," or "Thanks for the feedback." Those phrases buy you time to process without escalating the situation. Another key? Strengthen your sense of self. The more secure you are in who you are and what you stand for, the less you'll feel the need to react to every critical comment. Criticism might sting for a moment, but it won't shake your foundation. You'll recognize it for what it is, an opinion, not a verdict. Finally, learn to separate the message from the delivery. Sometimes criticism comes wrapped in anger or condescension, and that packaging can make it hard to hear the actual point. But if you can strip away the tone and focus on the content, you'll find it easier to respond calmly. Not every critique is worth your energy, and not every critic deserves your attention. Choose wisely. At the end of the day, being overly reactive to criticism isn't just about how you deal with feedback, it's about how you deal with yourself. The more you practice patience and self-awareness, the less power criticism will hold over you. And that, my friend, is freedom. Number 5, seeking validation constantly. We all crave it, validation. That little nod from the universe that says, "Yes, you're doing fine," or "Wow, you're amazing." It's natural, isn't it? Feeling seen and appreciated gives us a sense of worth. But here's the catch: when seeking validation becomes a habit, it quietly erodes your sense of self. It turns into this endless loop, a thirst that's never really quenched, leaving you dependent on others for something only you can truly provide. Let's break it down. When you're constantly looking for validation, you give away power. You let someone else decide if what you're doing is good enough, if who you are is enough. That's a slippery slope. Your mood, your confidence, and even your choices start to hinge on how others react. A compliment feels like sunshine, but the absence of one? It's like the lights go out. That's no way to live. Here's the sneaky part: it doesn't always look desperate. Validation seeking can be subtle. Maybe it's fishing for likes on social media, waiting for someone to notice your new haircut, or casually dropping your achievements into a conversation, hoping for that approving smile. It feels harmless at first, but over time, it starts to control you. Your self-worth becomes tied to external feedback, which is unpredictable at best and exhausting at worst. Why do we do this? Well, it's comforting. Validation feels like proof that we're doing okay, that we belong, that we matter. But the problem is, external validation is fleeting. It comes and goes like a breeze, never staying long enough to truly satisfy. And chasing it? That's a full-time job with no days off. It's draining, and it distracts you from what really matters: how you see yourself. Imagine this: you stop chasing it. You stop waiting for someone to pat you on the back or give you a gold star. You decide, right here and now, that your opinion of yourself is what counts. Sounds bold, doesn't it? But that's where freedom begins. When you stop needing others to validate your existence, you take back your power. You become grounded, self-assured, and strangely untouchable. It's not arrogance, it's liberation. But let's be honest. Letting go of this habit isn't easy. The world practically trains us to seek validation from the moment we're born. Good job. You're so smart. Wow, you're so talented. We grow up associating approval with worth. Unlearning that takes time and effort. It's like rewiring your brain, teaching yourself that you're enough, even when the world is silent. Start small. The next time you feel that urge to seek validation, pause. Ask yourself, why? What are you hoping to hear? And more importantly, can you give it to yourself? Instead of waiting for someone else to tell you you're doing great, look in the mirror and say it. It might feel weird at first, but trust me, it's powerful. Over time, it becomes second nature. And here's the best part: when you stop seeking validation, people notice. There's a quiet confidence about you that's magnetic. You're no longer trying to impress or prove yourself. You're just being, unapologetically. That kind of energy draws people in. It's ironic, isn't it? The less you seek validation, the more others respect you. At the end of the day, seeking validation constantly is like chasing shadows. No matter how hard you try, you never catch them. But when you stop running, when you stand still and own who you are, the shadows fade away. You realize you never needed them in the first place. What you were searching for was already within you, waiting to be recognized, not by others, but by you. And that kind of validation? It's unshakable. Number 6, engaging in trivial arguments. Let's talk about trivial arguments. You know the ones, those little, pointless debates that somehow suck the energy right out of your day. They start innocently enough, often over something so small it's almost laughable. And yet, before you know it, you're knee-deep in a back and forth that leaves you feeling drained, irritated, or just plain defeated. Why do we even bother? Here's the thing, humans are naturally wired to defend their ideas. It's part ego, part instinct, and part wanting to feel understood. But not every hill is worth dying on. When you engage in trivial arguments, you're burning mental fuel on things that, in the grand scheme of life, don't actually matter. Whether it's about who's right or wrong or something as mundane as differing preferences, these debates rarely, if ever, lead to meaningful outcomes. And let's be real, has anyone ever truly won one of these arguments? Not really. Even if you manage to prove your point, what do you gain? A fleeting sense of satisfaction? Maybe. But at what cost? You've likely wasted time, strained relationships, and possibly bruised a few egos along the way. That's not victory, it's Pyrrhic. From a Stoic perspective, engaging in trivial arguments is like trying to control the wind. Marcus Aurelius would probably say something like, focus on what adds value to your life. Let the rest blow past you. And he'd be right. The Stoic mindset teaches us to prioritize peace over pride, to recognize when a conversation is veering off into the land of pettiness, and to step away before it sucks us in. Here's where it gets tricky. Trivial arguments often disguise themselves as important ones. They feel pressing in the moment. You think, I have to say something. If I don't, they'll think I'm wrong. But pause for a second. Ask yourself, what am I really fighting for here? 9 times out of 10, the answer will be nothing substantial. It's just your ego whispering in your ear, urging you to defend your position for the sake of it. Ego loves a good argument, but your peace of mind doesn't. Another thing about these arguments, they're sticky. Even when you walk away, they linger. You replay the conversation in your head, thinking about what you should have said or how you could have made a sharper point. It's exhausting. And for what? A few words exchanged that neither party will remember in a week, let alone a year. So, how do you break free from this habit? First, learn to pick your battles. Not every comment needs a response. Not every disagreement requires your input. Sometimes, the most powerful thing you can do is let it slide. Bite your tongue. Walk away. Stay silent. It's not weakness, it's wisdom. You're choosing to conserve your energy for things that truly matter, things that align with your values and goals. Second, cultivate a mindset of detachment. When someone challenges your opinion, ask yourself, does this affect my life in any meaningful way? If the answer is no, then why get involved? Their perspective doesn't have to shake your foundation. Let them have their view, and you keep yours. It's that simple. Lastly, remember the bigger picture. Life is too short to spend it locked in pointless debates. Think about the time and mental energy you could reclaim if you stopped engaging in these petty disputes. Imagine the freedom of not feeling the need to prove yourself to everyone, all the time. That's a kind of liberation few people achieve, but it's available to anyone willing to let go of the need to be right about everything. So next time you feel the pull of a trivial argument, take a breath. Ask yourself, will this matter tomorrow? Next week? Next year? Chances are, it won't. And in that moment, you'll realize you've got better things to do. Let it go. Choose peace over pride. It's always the better option. Number 7, sharing every small success or struggle publicly. We live in a world where sharing has become second nature. The moment something happens, big or small, there's this itch to tell someone, to post about it, or to get some kind of acknowledgement. A good day? Let everyone know. A bad one? Share that too. It's as if every small success or struggle needs an audience, like our lives are mini performances playing out for the crowd. But here's a thought, not everything needs to be shared. When you announce every little win or setback, you start outsourcing your sense of worth. It's like handing over the keys to your self-esteem and saying, "Here, you drive." The more you rely on external validation for your victories, the more you weaken your internal sense of accomplishment. Success starts to feel hollow unless someone else is clapping for it, and struggles feel unbearable unless someone is sympathizing. That's a shaky foundation to stand on. The truth is, there's strength in keeping some things to yourself. Every time you share a small success, you open the door to opinions, some supportive, sure, but others dismissive or even critical. That's all, someone might think, or worse, say. And while you shouldn't let others dictate your emotions, constant exposure to outside opinions can chip away at your confidence. Over time, you might start filtering your actions through the lens of "will this impress people?" instead of "does this fulfill me?" On the flip side, sharing every struggle publicly can turn into a different kind of trap. While venting feels good in the moment, putting your difficulties on display can make you seem like you're fishing for pity or attention. People might start associating you with negativity, even if that's not your intention. Worse, you could end up reinforcing your own identity as someone who struggles, rather than someone who overcomes. There's a fine line between seeking support and broadcasting every hardship, and it's easy to blur. Let's also talk about energy. Constantly sharing means constantly explaining, updating, and, sometimes, justifying. It's draining. You spend precious time crafting the perfect caption, checking for reactions, and engaging in endless conversations about things that might not even matter a week later. All that energy could be going towards something far more productive, working quietly on your goals, for instance, or simply enjoying the moment for what it is, without an audience. Now, that doesn't mean you should never share anything. Celebrating big wins with loved ones or opening up about a significant struggle to someone you trust can be incredibly fulfilling. But the key is to be selective. Ask yourself, why am I sharing this? What do I hope to gain from it? If the answer leans more toward external validation than internal satisfaction, maybe hold off. There's power in savoring a win privately or navigating a challenge quietly. It builds resilience, independence, and a deeper connection with yourself. Another thing to consider is the fleeting nature of public reactions. People will like your post or comment on your story, but then they move on. They're not as invested in your life as you are, and that's not a bad thing. It's just reality. So why stake so much of your emotional well-being on reactions that are, at best, surface level and temporary? Instead of chasing applause or sympathy, learn to sit with your own feelings. Celebrate your wins with yourself. Reflect on your struggles in solitude. There's an intimacy to that, a kind of peace that can't be found in public spaces. Lastly, keeping some things private preserves your mystery. When people don't know every detail about your life, you maintain a certain intrigue. You're not predictable, not constantly putting everything on the table for inspection. This isn't about being secretive, it's about cultivating a sense of self that doesn't need external validation to feel complete. At its core, this habit is about reclaiming your narrative. Your life isn't a performance, and you don't owe anyone a play-by-play. Keep some wins close to your heart. Face some struggles in silence. You'll find that your connection with yourself grows stronger, and your energy stays focused on what truly matters. That, in itself, is a quiet victory. Number 8, gossiping. Let's not sugarcoat it, gossiping feels good in the moment. It's juicy, it's engaging, and let's be honest, it can make you feel like you're part of something. You're in the loop, you've got the inside scoop, and there's a strange thrill in sharing it. But here's the flip side, gossip is a double-edged sword. Sure, it cuts through boredom, but it also chips away at your character, little by little, each time you indulge. Think about what gossip really is. At its core, it's storytelling, but not the uplifting kind. It's tales of drama, judgment, and speculation, often at someone else's expense. When you gossip, you're not just talking about someone, you're dissecting them. Picking apart their choices, behaviors, or situations, often without knowing the full picture. It's an easy way to bond with others, but it's also shallow, like building a house on quicksand. Why do we do it? Because it's easy. Gossip is a shortcut to connection. It fills silences, creates shared experiences, and gives us a sense of importance. Look at me, I know something you don't. It feeds our ego. But the problem is, the connection built on gossip is flimsy at best. It's temporary, and it comes with a price, trust. If you're quick to gossip about others, what's stopping you from doing the same to the person you're talking to? That thought lingers in the back of people's minds, whether they say it or not. Gossip also keeps you stuck in a negative cycle. When you focus on other people's lives, especially their mistakes, shortcomings, or scandals, you take the spotlight off your own. It's a distraction, a way to avoid looking inward. But while you're busy analyzing someone else's choices, your own growth gets put on pause. It's like driving while staring out the side window, you're bound to crash eventually. And then there's the energy it takes. Gossip isn't just idle chatter, it's an emotional investment. You get caught up in the drama, replaying conversations in your head, wondering who said what and to whom. It's exhausting, isn't it? Like carrying around a bag of rocks and wondering why your back hurts. Dropping that weight, choosing not to engage, feels lighter, freer. So, how do you step away from it? Start by becoming aware. Notice the moments when gossip creeps into your conversations. It's subtle at first, a comment here, a sly remark there. But once you start paying attention, you'll see how often it happens. And when it does, ask yourself, what's the point? Is this adding value to my life or anyone else's? 9 times out of 10, the answer is no. Instead of gossiping, redirect the energy. If a conversation is veering towards someone else's business, steer it back to ideas, plans, or shared goals. Talk about things that inspire you, challenge you, or excite you. It might feel awkward at first, like learning a new language, but it's worth it. Over time, people will notice that you're different. You're not the one spreading rumors or stirring the pot. You're the one people can trust. And trust? That's priceless. When you remove gossip from your life, you build stronger, more meaningful connections. People see you as someone who lifts others up instead of tearing them down. Your words carry more weight because they're not tangled in negativity. In the end, gossip is cheap. It's easy to start, but it costs you more than you realize, your time, your energy, and your integrity. Let it go. Leave the drama where it belongs, out of your conversations and far away from your peace of mind. You'll find that silence isn't empty, it's full of freedom. Number 9, over-apologizing. let's be honest, saying sorry all the time can feel like a reflex. Someone bumps into you? Sorry. You have a question in a meeting? Sorry for asking. You need to step around someone in a crowded space? Oh, sorry. Before you know it, you're tossing out apologies like they're candy at a parade, even when you've done absolutely nothing wrong. Why do we do this? Over-apologizing is one of those sneaky habits that feels polite on the surface but quietly chips away at your confidence over time. Each unnecessary apology sends a subtle message, not just to others, but to yourself, that you're in the wrong. It's like you're preemptively taking the blame for existing, for taking up space, for having needs or boundaries. And that's a problem. Here's the kicker: apologizing when it's not needed doesn't actually make you more likable or easier to get along with. In fact, it can have the opposite effect. When you apologize too often, it can dilute the weight of your words. If every little thing warrants a sorry, then what happens when you truly need to make a heartfelt apology? It might not carry the same sincerity because, let's face it, people have gotten used to hearing you apologize for nothing. Stoic philosophy teaches us to focus on what we can control, and you know what you can't control? Other people's perceptions of you. Over-apologizing often stems from a deep-seated fear of being judged, misunderstood, or seen as a burden. But guess what? You're not responsible for managing how others feel about you. You're responsible for your actions, yes, but not for the imaginary offenses you think you might have caused just by existing. There's freedom in realizing that. So, what can you do instead of over-apologizing? Start by paying attention to your words. Notice how often sorry slips out of your mouth, even when it's unnecessary. You might be surprised, it's probably more than you think. Once you're aware of it, you can start replacing those automatic apologies with something more intentional. Instead of saying, "Sorry for bothering you," try, "Thanks for taking the time to help me." Instead of, "Sorry I'm late," go with, "Thanks for waiting." See the difference? One acknowledges the situation without diminishing yourself. Another thing to consider is why you feel the need to apologize so much in the first place. Are you trying to avoid conflict? Are you worried about seeming rude or demanding? Understanding the root of the habit can help you break it. Maybe you were taught as a kid that politeness means apologizing for everything. Or maybe it's a coping mechanism you've developed over the years to smooth over interactions. Whatever the case, it's worth digging into. Now, this isn't to say you should never apologize. Genuine apologies are powerful. When you've hurt someone, taken a misstep, or made a mistake, owning up to it with a sincere "I'm sorry" is a sign of strength, not weakness. But the key word here is genuine. Save your apologies for the moments that truly warrant them. That way, when you do say sorry, people will know you mean it. Breaking the habit of over-apologizing isn't easy. It takes practice, self-awareness, and a little courage. You might feel awkward at first, like you're being too bold or even rude by not apologizing for every little thing. But over time, you'll notice a shift, not just in how others see you, but in how you see yourself. You'll feel more confident, more grounded, and more in control of your words and actions. So next time you catch yourself about to apologize unnecessarily, pause. Take a deep breath. Ask yourself, do I really need to apologize for this? If the answer is no, let it go. Hold your ground. Speak with confidence. And remember, you don't need to say sorry for simply being you. Number 10. Comparing yourself to others. Let's get this out of the way. Comparing yourself to others is a trap. It's sneaky, though. It creeps in quietly, disguised as curiosity or motivation. You scroll, you see someone's success, and suddenly, without realizing it, you're stacking their highlight reel against your behind-the-scenes chaos. And just like that, you feel smaller, slower, or somehow less than. Sound familiar? Here's the thing, comparison doesn't lead anywhere good. It's like running a race where the finish line keeps moving. No matter how much you achieve, there's always someone doing more, achieving faster, or living seemingly better. You could be doing perfectly fine, even thriving, but the moment you start measuring yourself against someone else's progress, your wins feel like losses. It's a mental trick, a perspective shift that does nothing but steal your peace. Why do we do it, though? Part of it is human nature. We're wired to evaluate our place in the world, to check where we stand in the grand scheme of things. But let's be honest, it's not the Stone Age anymore. We're not sizing each other up for survival. And yet, here we are, letting someone else's life dictate how we feel about our own. It's exhausting, isn't it? What makes this habit even worse is how incomplete the picture usually is. People show you what they want you to see. It's the filtered version, the polished side, the success without the struggle. But you're living with your whole truth. You see the grind, the doubts, the missteps. Comparing your raw footage to someone else's highlight reel is like comparing a draft to a finished book. It's unfair to you. And let's talk about what comparison does to your mindset. It's not just about feeling inadequate, it's about losing focus on what really matters. Instead of working on your goals, you're busy watching someone else achieve theirs. Instead of celebrating your progress, you're nitpicking the gaps. Comparison makes you a spectator in your own life, and that's no way to live. So how do you break free? Start by shifting your perspective. Every time you catch yourself comparing, remind yourself that you're on your own path. Your journey is yours alone, with its own pace, its own challenges, and its own triumphs. What works for someone else might not work for you, and that's okay. Life isn't a one-size-fits-all deal. Next, focus on gratitude. It sounds cliché, but it works. Take stock of what you have, what you've achieved, and who you've become. When you're genuinely thankful for your own life, it becomes harder to envy someone else's. Gratitude grounds you, pulling your attention away from what's missing and toward what's already here. It also helps to limit your exposure to triggers. If scrolling through social media sends you down the comparison rabbit hole, take a break. Curate your feed. Follow people who inspire you without making you feel less than. Better yet, spend more time offline, in the real world, where the pressures of curated perfection fade. And finally, practice self-compassion. Be kind to yourself. You're doing the best you can with the cards you've been dealt. Celebrate your wins, no matter how small they might seem. Honor your struggles, because they've shaped you into who you are. You don't need to be anyone else, you're enough, just as you are. At the end of the day, comparing yourself to others robs you of joy. It pulls you out of the present moment and into a space of inadequacy that doesn't deserve your energy. Let it go. Focus on your lane. Trust your process. Because when you stop looking sideways, you'll realize you're already farther along than you thought. And that's freedom. Your habits shape your destiny, choose them wisely. In the next section, let go over habits that instantly make people look down on you. Number 1, gossiping. Gossiping, oh man, where do we even start? It seems like such a harmless habit, doesn't it? A quick chat with a friend, a bit of back and forth about someone you both know. But here's the thing, gossiping has this subtle way of poisoning not only the way others see us, but how we see ourselves, too. Stoicism, as you might know, encourages us to focus on what we can control and to avoid getting entangled in the things outside our grasp, like the drama of others' lives. You've probably noticed that when someone constantly engages in gossip, they begin to lose credibility. Sure, it might feel good in the moment, trading information or passing judgment about people who aren't around to defend themselves. It's a cheap thrill, isn't it? But people start to see through it. They'll wonder, If you're talking about someone else behind their back, what's stopping you from doing the same to them? The moment you indulge in gossip, you're branding yourself as someone who can't be trusted. Not exactly a great reputation to build, right? Gossip is often the easy way out. It gives you a sense of connection, of belonging, as if you're in the know or sharing something others might not. It provides an illusion of importance, like you're part of some exclusive club. But let's be real, when you rely on gossip to maintain relationships, what are you really doing? You're engaging in something that doesn't require depth or substance. Instead of talking about ideas, philosophies, or the things that truly matter, you're sinking into petty, low-level chatter. That's a surefire way to undermine your own personal growth and attract people who are more interested in drama than in anything meaningful. It's also worth noting that gossip usually thrives on insecurity. When you gossip, you're often trying to elevate yourself by putting others down. But this is a toxic cycle. It gives you a brief sense of superiority, like you're better because you know something about someone else's life. But deep down, it just reflects a lack of real self-esteem. Think about it, why do we feel the need to tear others down in the first place? Isn't that a sign that we're not truly confident in who we are? From a Stoic perspective, gossiping is a waste of mental energy. Marcus Aurelius, one of the greatest Stoic philosophers, constantly reminded himself to focus on what's within his control and to steer clear of distractions. Gossiping is, in essence, a distraction. It pulls your attention away from what really matters, your own growth, your own actions, your own virtues. Instead of spending time worrying about others or indulging in their failures, you should be focusing on how you can better yourself. How can you cultivate wisdom, courage, and self-discipline if your head is always wrapped up in the lives of people who don't even matter in the grand scheme of things? And let's not forget the impact gossiping has on your relationships. The more you indulge in it, the more you push people away. Think about it. If you're the type of person who's constantly talking about others behind their backs, how long do you think it will be before people start questioning whether they can trust you with their own secrets? The moment someone starts gossiping about others to you, they're signaling that they probably do the same about you. Trust gets eroded, and before you know it, you're isolated. Not exactly the kind of relationships that will support your personal growth or long-term happiness. Now, I know it can be tempting. The urge to spill the latest juicy tidbit, to vent or share something that feels oh so satisfying, is hard to ignore. But think about what it's costing you. Every moment spent gossiping is a moment you could have spent developing your own character. So, next time you feel the pull to dive into some gossip, take a step back. Remind yourself of what you really want to achieve, what kind of person you want to become. Is it really worth sacrificing your integrity for the fleeting pleasure of gossip? The answer, I think, is pretty clear. Number 2, complaining constantly. Complaining, a habit that feels like a quick vent but ends up being a heavy anchor on your personal growth. Let's not sugarcoat it, nobody likes to hear constant complaints. Whether it's about the weather, your job, or the minor inconveniences life throws your way, incessant complaining has a way of wearing people down. It's not just about the noise you create in conversations, it's about the energy you radiate. And spoiler alert, it's not the kind of energy that draws people in. At its core, constant complaining is a mindset issue. It's not about the circumstances but about the lens through which you view them. When someone complains all the time, it screams, "I'm powerless." It signals to others that you've surrendered your agency and are simply choosing to wallow instead of looking for solutions. Now, don't get me wrong, everyone needs to vent occasionally. Life isn't all sunshine and roses, and sharing your struggles can build connections. But there's a massive difference between venting and setting up camp in Complaintville. Here's the thing, when you're always complaining, you unknowingly shape your identity as someone who focuses on the negative. People start associating you with that energy. They might not even realize it, but over time, they'll feel drained just being around you. Your words become repetitive, predictable, and ultimately unproductive. You might think you're bonding over shared frustrations, but in reality, you're just digging a pit for yourself and inviting others to join you in it. What makes this habit particularly damaging is how it trains your brain. The more you complain, the more you reinforce those neural pathways. It's like walking a dirt road over and over until it becomes a trench. The smallest inconveniences start to feel monumental because your brain is conditioned to dwell on them. It's a self-fulfilling loop. You notice more things to complain about, you complain, and then you notice even more. The result? A life where gratitude and optimism have no room to breathe. Now let's flip the coin for a second. Imagine you meet someone who never complains. Even when they face tough times, they approach them with a calm, solution-oriented mindset. How do you feel around that person? Inspired? Relaxed? That's because they embody a sense of control over their lives. And isn't that what Stoic philosophy teaches us? The idea that while we can't control external events, we can absolutely control how we respond to them? Complaining is the opposite of that. It's letting the external world dictate your inner state. If you find yourself stuck in this habit, the first step is awareness. Start catching yourself mid-complaint. Ask yourself, is this complaint necessary? Does it add value to the conversation or my life? Often, you'll find the answer is no. Then, challenge yourself to reframe the situation. Instead of, ugh, my boss gave me so much work today, try, I have a lot to do, but it's a chance to prove what I'm capable of. It might feel forced at first, but over time, this rewiring changes your perspective. And let's not ignore the social impact. Complaining constantly makes you less approachable, less magnetic. People gravitate toward those who uplift, not those who drag down. When you're stuck in a cycle of complaints, you limit your opportunities to connect meaningfully with others. It's not that people don't care about your struggles, they do. But when your identity becomes tied to being that person who always complains, it's hard for them to see anything else. So, here's a challenge for you. The next time you feel the urge to complain, pause. Take a deep breath and redirect that energy. Maybe it's a chance to find a solution, to express gratitude, or simply to let it go. You'll not only lighten your own mental load but also show others that you're someone who can rise above challenges. And trust me, that's the kind of vibe people respect and admire. Number 3, being passive-aggressive. Let's talk about passive-aggressiveness, one of those habits that can instantly kill your vibe and make people think less of you. You know what I'm talking about, the silent digs, the sarcastic remarks disguised as jokes, or the classic I'm fine when everything about your energy screams the opposite. It's like you're serving bitterness on a platter, but instead of being direct about it, you wrap it in a bow of subtlety and confusion. And guess what? It's not cute. It's not clever. It's just frustrating. People pick up on this behavior quicker than you'd think. They might not call it out every time, but deep down, they know something's off. Why? Because being passive-aggressive feels like trying to solve a puzzle where half the pieces are missing. And no one enjoys feeling like they're walking on eggshells, trying to figure out if your I don't care actually means I care too much but don't know how to say it. At its core, passive-aggressiveness comes from an unwillingness, or inability, to confront issues head-on. Maybe it's fear of conflict. Maybe it's insecurity. Or maybe it's just a bad habit that's been left unchecked for too long. Whatever the reason, this behavior shows a lack of emotional maturity. It signals to others that you're not ready to handle situations like an adult, and honestly, that can make people lose respect for you. Now, don't get it twisted. Nobody's saying you have to turn into some kind of confrontation-loving warrior. Being direct doesn't mean being aggressive or rude. It just means owning your feelings and communicating them clearly. If something bothers you, say it. If you're upset, explain why. It's not about starting fights, it's about finding solutions. Here's the kicker: passive-aggressive behavior doesn't just hurt your relationships, it hurts you. Think about it. Every time you choose sarcasm over honesty or a cold shoulder over a candid conversation, you're bottling up emotions that need to be released. And bottled up emotions have a nasty habit of spilling over at the worst possible times. Over time, this can lead to unnecessary stress, resentment, and even a sense of isolation. On top of that, people tend to avoid those who are passive-aggressive. Why? Because it's exhausting to deal with. Nobody wants to decode hidden meanings or decipher subtle digs in everyday interactions. It's like signing up for a game where the rules are intentionally unclear. Most people would rather not play. If you're catching yourself slipping into passive-aggressive tendencies, don't panic. Awareness is the first step. Start by paying attention to your patterns. Do you tend to shut down when you're upset? Do you rely on sarcasm to express frustration? Recognizing the behavior is half the battle. Next, practice honesty. It might feel uncomfortable at first, maybe even terrifying, but it gets easier with time. You don't have to spill your deepest feelings in every interaction, but you can start small. If a friend does something that annoys you, instead of rolling your eyes or making a snarky comment, try saying, "Hey, can we talk about something? This bothered me, and I want to clear the air." Simple, right? Also, remember to stay calm. There's a fine line between assertiveness and aggression. The goal is to express your feelings without pointing fingers or escalating the situation. Use I statements instead of you accusations. For example, say, "I felt hurt when this happened," instead of, "You always do this." Small shifts in language can make a huge difference. Ultimately, ditching passive-aggressiveness is about valuing yourself and your relationships enough to embrace honesty. It's about choosing clarity over confusion, connection over games, and growth over stagnation. And trust me, the respect you'll earn from others and yourself will be worth every awkward conversation along the way. So, stop hiding behind the sarcasm and start speaking your truth. Life's too short for cryptic messages and unspoken frustrations. Be real, be bold, and watch how people start to see you in a whole new light. Number 4, being overly judgmental of others. Being overly judgmental of others is one of those habits that seems almost ingrained in human nature. It's easy, right? You see someone do something, and bam, your mind is already calculating how they measure up, whether they're doing it right, or how they stack against your own standards. But here's the problem: judging others isn't just a habit that reflects badly on the people you're judging, it does serious damage to you too. Let's be real for a second. When you constantly judge people, what does it say about you? It's not just about putting others down to make yourself feel superior. It's about creating a mindset where everything and everyone around you becomes a point of comparison. You're not seeing people for who they truly are, you're filtering them through the lens of your own biases, fears, and insecurities. And that's not only unfair to them, it's unfair to you. It keeps you stuck in this loop of negativity and makes it harder to appreciate the diversity of human experiences. Stoicism, at its core, teaches us that we don't control what other people do, and we certainly don't have the right to judge their choices. What we can control, however, is how we respond to them. It's not about condemning or praising the actions of others, but rather focusing on our own responses. Marcus Aurelius, for instance, had this profound understanding that people act based on their own circumstances, perceptions, and histories. So, when you judge someone too harshly, you're ignoring that complex web of factors that might be influencing their behavior. In essence, you're judging them without understanding them, and that's a surefire way to create resentment, both in yourself and in others. But the issue runs deeper. The more you judge others, the more you're actually judging yourself. Think about it, When you place all your energy into picking apart someone else's life, aren't you just avoiding your own growth? The energy spent scrutinizing someone else's flaws is energy you could be using to examine your own. Instead of looking inward to refine your own actions and thoughts, you're projecting onto others. You're putting all this mental energy into comparing, ranking, and assessing people as if that's somehow going to elevate you. On top of that, constantly being judgmental creates a kind of mental cage. Instead of embracing life with all its ups and downs, all its strange, unpredictable twists, you start to filter everything through a lens of right and wrong. There's no room for nuance, no space to appreciate that people are complicated and multifaceted. You begin to see the world in terms of black and white when, in reality, it's all shades of gray. And you end up stuck in a mindset where every difference is a threat to your own sense of stability. Here's where it gets interesting from a Stoic perspective. Judgment often comes from our own inability to accept the world as it is. The Stoics believe that life is full of chaos, unpredictability, and things outside our control. And yet, we're constantly trying to impose our own expectations on others, thinking that if they conform to our ideas of what's right, everything will be easier. But life doesn't work that way. People are messy, flawed, and complicated, and when we judge them for that, we're essentially denying their humanity. We're turning them into mere objects of our own scrutiny rather than acknowledging them as individuals with their own struggles and experiences. Being overly judgmental also locks you into a position where you're never truly free. You're bound by your own rigid expectations, constantly assessing, criticizing, and ranking the actions of others. It's exhausting. Imagine how much energy that takes up, all that mental effort spent on things that don't even matter. The moment you let go of judgment, you free yourself. You stop getting bogged down by every little thing someone else does. Instead of being on the lookout for flaws, you become someone who's present, someone who focuses on their own development and lets others live their lives without interference. There's another side to this too. When you stop judging, you also stop living in constant fear of being judged. You let go of that need for external validation. You stop measuring your worth against others, and that's a huge shift. You realize that your value doesn't come from comparing yourself to someone else, it comes from your actions, your mindset, and your ability to respond to life with grace and acceptance. At the end of the day, being overly judgmental of others doesn't just make you seem small, it also keeps you stuck. It prevents you from seeing people for who they are, and it stops you from growing into the person you're meant to become. So next time you catch yourself judging someone, try stepping back. Breathe. Remember that you don't know their story, and you certainly don't control their choices. Focus on what you can control, your own growth, your own actions, and your own response to the world around you. That's where the real power lies. Number 5. Chasing instant gratification. Let's talk about instant gratification. You know, that little itch in your brain that screams, "I want it now." It's seductive, isn't it? Whether it's mindlessly scrolling on your phone, indulging in junk food, or choosing the easy path over the one that actually leads somewhere meaningful, chasing instant gratification feels good, for a moment. But here's the kicker, it never lasts, and the aftermath often feels worse than the fleeting pleasure it gave you. When you give into instant gratification, what you're really doing is trading long-term growth for short-term comfort. It's like saying, "I'd rather feel good now and suffer later." And you might not realize it immediately, but over time, this habit creates a life that feels stagnant, hollow, and aimless. People notice it too. They see it in your lack of discipline, in the way you flit from one easy fix to another without sticking to anything that actually matters. It's not a good look. Here's the thing, instant gratification has a way of eroding your character. It makes you appear weak-willed and incapable of handling discomfort. And let's face it, discomfort is where the magic happens. It's where you grow, build resilience, and prove to yourself, and others, that you've got what it takes to tackle life head-on. When you constantly give in to the urge for immediate rewards, you're essentially telling the world, "I'd rather take the easy way out." And that's not the kind of energy people respect. It's not even about what others think, though. Deep down, you know you're selling yourself short. You know you're capable of so much more if you just step away from the lure of instant pleasures and focus on the bigger picture. But let's dig deeper. Why is this habit so dangerous? Because it trains your brain to crave dopamine hits for every little thing. You start associating progress with quick wins instead of real effort. Over time, you might lose the ability to delay gratification altogether. Patience? Out the window. Perseverance? Nope. The discipline to stick to a goal, even when it's tough? Forget about it. It's a slippery slope, and once you're on it, climbing back up feels nearly impossible. The Stoics would call this enslavement, being ruled by your impulses rather than your rational mind. To them, a life worth living is one where you master your desires, not the other way around. They tell you that true freedom comes from self-control, from knowing when to say no to the things that don't serve your greater purpose. And let's be honest, how many of those quick fixes truly serve you? How many of them actually add value to your life? Now, don't get it twisted. There's nothing wrong with enjoying life's little pleasures. The problem is when they take over, when they distract you from the things that really matter. It's about balance. You don't have to be a monk, but you do have to ask yourself, is this helping me become who I want to be? Here's a pro tip: start practicing the art of saying no. Not just to others, but to yourself. The next time you feel the pull of instant gratification, pause. Take a moment to think about what you're giving up in exchange for that fleeting hit of pleasure. Is it worth it? 9 times out of 10, the answer will be no. And let's talk about how people perceive you when you chase instant gratification. It's not just about you losing focus, it's about how others view your priorities. They see someone who can't commit to the grind, who's easily swayed by shiny distractions. Over time, this chips away at your credibility. People respect those who stay the course, who work for something greater than a momentary high. They don't admire those who constantly fall into the trap of easy now, hard later. So, how do you break free? Start small. Set one goal that requires delayed gratification, a workout routine, a project, even something as simple as saving a bit of money instead of spending it. Stick to it. Every time you resist the urge for an easy win, you're strengthening your self-control. And trust me, that self-control? It's like a superpower. It changes how you see yourself and how others see you. Suddenly, you're the person who can wait, who can endure, who can push through discomfort to achieve something meaningful. In the end, chasing instant gratification is a habit that feels good in the moment but robs you of so much more. The antidote? Focus on the long game. Build a life where your actions align with your values, where you're not just chasing the next quick hit but working towards something that truly matters. People will notice the shift. More importantly, you'll notice it. And that's when life starts to feel really, really good. Number 6. Poor hygiene. Let's get real. Poor hygiene is a fast track to losing respect before you even get a chance to say a word. It's one of those things people notice instantly, whether they admit it to you or not. The way you present yourself, how you smell, how clean you look, even how well you've taken care of your nails, says a lot about you. And unfortunately, if hygiene isn't your strong suit, people tend to make some pretty harsh assumptions. Why does it matter so much? Because hygiene is one of those unspoken rules of social interaction. It's a basic courtesy. When you don't take care of yourself, it sends a message, intentional or not, that you don't care about others either. And while that might not be true, perception often outweighs reality. Let's talk about the obvious stuff first. bad breath, body odor, greasy hair. These are the kind of things that make people lean back when they should be leaning in. It's not personal, it's just instinct. Our senses are hardwired to pick up on these things, and unfortunately, they can create barriers you didn't even realize were there. Imagine trying to make a great first impression while someone's distracted by an overpowering smell or a stain on your shirt. Not ideal, right? But hygiene goes deeper than just surface-level cleanliness. It's about showing respect for yourself and the spaces you share with others. Think about it. If you can't be bothered to maintain your personal hygiene, what does that say about how you handle other responsibilities? People might start questioning your work ethic, your attention to detail, or even your reliability. Harsh? Maybe. But that's how the world works sometimes. And it's not just about how others see you. Poor hygiene can mess with your confidence too. When you feel clean and put together, you carry yourself differently. You stand taller. You walk into a room with a little more swagger. But when you're self-conscious about your appearance or worried about how you might smell, that confidence takes a hit. It's like having an invisible weight on your shoulders, holding you back from being your best self. Now, let's not overcomplicate this. Maintaining good hygiene isn't rocket science. It's about building simple habits and sticking to them. Take showers regularly. Use deodorant. Brush and floss your teeth. Wear clean clothes. These might seem like no-brainers, but you'd be surprised how often people overlook the basics. And here's a pro tip: pay attention to the small stuff. Trim your nails. Wash your hands often. Keep your shoes clean. Even things like keeping your eyebrows tidy or using a good skincare routine can make a difference. These details might seem minor, but they add up. They show that you care about how you present yourself, and that doesn't go unnoticed. Now, some people might argue, why should I care what others think? Shouldn't they judge me for who I am, not how I look or smell? Sure, in a perfect world, that would be nice. But the reality is, we live in a world where first impressions matter. And hygiene is a big part of that. It's not about being shallow, it's about creating an environment where people feel comfortable around you. Good hygiene isn't just about looking polished, it's about taking responsibility for yourself. It's about respecting the people you interact with and making sure they feel at ease in your presence. Because let's face it, no one wants to have an uncomfortable conversation about why they're keeping their distance. So, if hygiene isn't something you've prioritized, it's time to step it up. Not just for others, but for you. When you feel clean and fresh, it boosts your mood, sharpens your mindset, and lets you focus on what really matters. It's a small effort with huge payoffs. At the end of the day, hygiene is one of those things you have total control over. It's not about vanity, it's about self-respect and the message you send to the world. Take care of the basics, and watch how much easier it becomes to connect with people, earn their respect, and show them the best version of yourself. Number 7. Relying on external circumstances for happiness. Relying on external circumstances for happiness, it's one of those habits that seems to sneak into our lives without us even realizing it. It's easy to think that once you get that promotion, that shiny new thing, or that perfect relationship, everything will finally click. Happiness will be yours. The thing is, this approach is like building a house on sand. Sure, it might feel solid for a while, but when the wind picks up or things change, and they always do, that happiness crumbles. Let's pause and think about this. If your happiness depends on something outside of you, whether it's people, events, or material possessions, what happens when those things shift, disappear, or fail to meet your expectations? You end up stuck, right? Constantly chasing the next external source of happiness, but never really feeling fulfilled. You might get a temporary high, but it fades, leaving you chasing again. And guess what? You'll always be chasing. From a Stoic perspective, this is where things go off course. Stoicism teaches us to focus on what's within our control and to stop hinging our well-being on things we can't influence. External circumstances are just that, external. They're constantly in flux, unpredictable, and beyond our grasp. If you tie your happiness to those, you're essentially giving up your own agency, your own power. You're allowing the world around you to dictate how you feel. It's like being tossed around in a storm without a rudder. It might feel like a wild ride, but you're not really in control of where you're headed. Think about it, happiness that's tied to something external is fragile. It's dependent on things aligning perfectly, and let's face it, life doesn't always work that way. Circumstances change. People change. The world changes. And if you're tying your peace of mind to that ever-shifting tide, you'll always be at its mercy. One day, something might go wrong, and suddenly, everything that once seemed to bring you joy feels empty. That's why true contentment can't be found out there, in the world of things and events. It has to come from within. The Stoics had a pretty profound understanding of this. They knew that real peace comes from cultivating a mindset that's grounded in virtue, wisdom, and self-awareness, not from what you own or who's around you. Marcus Aurelius, one of the Stoic philosophers, often reminded himself that he could control his thoughts and reactions, but not the actions of others or the events of the world. He didn't let external circumstances shake his inner peace. Instead of looking outward for happiness, he looked inward, cultivating an attitude of acceptance and calm. And here's the kicker, because of that, he wasn't dependent on the world to make him feel good. He found joy in simply living in alignment with his values. When you rely on external circumstances for happiness, you're putting all your eggs in a basket that's bound to break. When you tie your happiness to a promotion, or getting the approval of others, or acquiring things, you're setting yourself up for disappointment. Because these are all temporary. The promotion comes with new pressures, the approval from others fades, and the thrill of a new possession wears off. What's left then? If happiness is only fleeting, it becomes harder to find a lasting sense of fulfillment. But what if you could find happiness in something more stable? Something you can carry with you no matter what life throws your way. That's where the Stoic mindset comes in. When you focus on developing internal virtues, things like resilience, wisdom, and self-discipline, you create a foundation for happiness that's rock solid. No matter what happens outside, you're steady inside. Instead of waiting for the next external factor to boost your mood, you learn to cultivate peace from within. Here's the thing, happiness that comes from within isn't just about feeling content all the time. It's about finding peace and satisfaction even when things aren't perfect. It's about accepting life as it is, with all its ups and downs, and being able to find joy regardless of external circumstances. You learn that happiness isn't something you get from the outside, it's something you create within yourself. So, stop letting the world dictate how you feel. Sure, external things can be enjoyable, getting that new car, having a fun night out, or achieving a goal. But don't make the mistake of thinking that your happiness depends on them. Instead, focus on building that inner strength, on grounding your sense of well-being in the things you can control. Because when you do that, the outside world becomes less of a roller coaster and more of a steady path forward, no matter what. Number 8. Neglecting your health and well-being. Let's get real for a second. If you're neglecting your health, you're sending a loud, unspoken message to the world that you don't value yourself. And if you don't value yourself, how can you expect others to? It's harsh, but it's true. Whether it's ignoring your diet, skipping workouts, or brushing off your mental health, this kind of neglect doesn't just harm you, it changes how people see you. And not in a good way. When you don't take care of yourself, it shows. Your energy dips. You look tired, sluggish, and disorganized. You might even come across as someone who lacks discipline or self-respect. And here's the kicker, people notice these things way more than you think. You might believe no one cares, but trust me, they do. The way you treat your body and mind says a lot about who you are as a person. Health isn't just about hitting the gym or eating greens. It's a mindset. It's about showing up for yourself every day, even when it's hard. Especially when it's hard. When you neglect your health, you're essentially choosing comfort over effort. And while that might feel fine in the moment, lounging on the couch, eating junk food, skipping another night of proper sleep, it adds up. The cracks start to show. You lose your sharpness, your edge. What's more, this habit bleeds into other areas of your life. Neglecting your health often means neglecting other responsibilities too. You skip deadlines, make excuses, and let things slide. It becomes a cycle. You don't feel good, so you don't perform well, which makes you feel worse. Before you know it, you're stuck in a rut, and climbing out feels impossible. But let's get deeper into why this matters beyond appearances. Stoic philosophy teaches us the importance of taking responsibility for our lives. It's about controlling what we can and letting go of what we can't. And guess what? Your health is something you can control. You can't stop aging or predict every illness, but you can absolutely influence how you treat your body and mind today. Neglecting your health is like handing over that control. It's saying, I don't care enough to try. Now, let's talk about the ripple effect. When you prioritize your well-being, people notice that too. They see someone who's disciplined, focused, and intentional about how they live. Someone who respects themselves. And let's be real, respect is contagious. When you respect yourself, others are more likely to respect you too. It's not about vanity or being perfect, it's about showing the world that you take yourself seriously. Neglecting your health also clouds your mind. Think about it, when you're constantly tired, stressed, or unwell, it's hard to think clearly. You're reactive instead of proactive. Small problems feel overwhelming because you don't have the energy to deal with them. On the flip side, when you're taking care of yourself, eating well, staying active, getting enough sleep, you operate on a different level. You think sharper, move faster, and feel more in control. And let's be honest, control feels good. Breaking the habit of neglecting your health doesn't mean overhauling your life overnight. Start small. Drink more water. Take a 10-minute walk. Swap one unhealthy snack for something nourishing. These little actions build momentum. And as you build that momentum, you'll notice a shift, not just in how you feel, but in how others respond to you. When you're healthy and vibrant, people are drawn to you. Your energy is magnetic. They see someone who's capable, reliable, and disciplined. Someone who values themselves enough to put in the work. And isn't that what we all want? To feel capable, respected, and in control of our lives? So, let's drop the excuses. Your health is your foundation. Neglect it, and everything else starts to crumble. Nurture it, and you'll find that every part of your life improves, your relationships, your work, even your mindset. Because at the end of the day, taking care of yourself isn't just a personal win, it's a statement to the world that you're here to show up, give your best, and live fully. And who doesn't respect that? Number 9, trying to control things beyond your control. Let's cut to the chase. Trying to control things that are completely out of your hands is a losing game. Yet, so many people fall into this trap. It's like chasing smoke. No matter how much you reach for it, all you end up with is frustration. And here's the kicker, not only does it make you miserable, but it also makes people around you lose respect for you. Why? Because it's exhausting to watch someone obsess over things they clearly can't change. It's a little like watching someone yell at the rain, thinking they can stop the downpour through sheer force of will. Everyone else just stands there, silently thinking, why don't they just grab an umbrella? When you try to control the uncontrollable, it shows a lack of perspective. It's like you're screaming to the universe, "I can bend reality if I just push hard enough." Spoiler alert, you can't. Life has a way of doing its own thing, no matter how much effort or energy you pour into resisting it. This habit isn't just annoying to others, it's harmful to you. Think about how much energy it takes to worry, fret, and try to manipulate things that simply aren't yours to command. You burn out. You stress yourself to the point of exhaustion. And for what? To feel like you're in charge of something that was never within your grasp to begin with? It's like pouring water into a bucket with a hole in the bottom. And here's the Stoic truth: the only thing you ever really have control over is yourself. Your actions, your reactions, your mindset, that's your domain. Everything else? That's the Wild West, my friend. Other people's opinions, the weather, the traffic, the economy, these are all things you can influence to some degree, but you can't outright control them. The sooner you accept that, the freer you'll feel. Now, let's talk about what this looks like in action. People who try to control the uncontrollable tend to micromanage. They nitpick. They stress over outcomes instead of focusing on their efforts. And, quite frankly, it's draining for everyone involved. No one wants to work with or be around someone who's constantly trying to force situations or people to fit into their perfect little box. On top of that, this habit can make you seem insecure. Because, really, why would anyone feel the need to control everything if they truly believed in their ability to handle whatever comes their way? Trying to control the uncontrollable is often rooted in fear, fear of uncertainty, fear of failure, fear of not being good enough. But here's the irony: the more you cling to control, the more out of control you actually feel. So, how do you break out of this cycle? Start by asking yourself a simple question whenever you're stressed: is this something I can control? If the answer is yes, great, figure out what steps you can take and focus your energy there. If the answer is no, let it go. Seriously, let it go. It's not easy, but it's necessary. Another key is to shift your focus inward. Instead of obsessing over outcomes, pay attention to your own actions. Are you showing up? Are you doing your best? Are you staying true to your values? That's what matters. Because at the end of the day, the result isn't always in your hands, but how you handle the journey is. Here's the beauty of this mindset: it's liberating. When you stop trying to control things you can't, you free yourself from a ton of unnecessary stress. You can actually enjoy the ride instead of constantly fighting against the tide. And, bonus, people will respect you more for it. They'll see someone who's grounded, self-aware, and wise enough to know when to act and when to step back. So, stop gripping so tightly. Trust yourself to handle what's yours to handle, and trust the rest to unfold as it will. There's power in surrendering to the flow of life. It's not giving up, it's stepping up. It's saying, I'll do my part, and the rest is up to the universe. That's real strength. That's real control. And, most importantly, that's the kind of energy people look up to, not down on. Number 10. Playing the victim. Playing the victim, it's one of those sneaky habits that can completely derail your personal growth. It feels almost natural sometimes, doesn't it? Life throws challenges your way, and it's easy to slip into the mindset that everything is happening to you, like the world is out to get you, and you're powerless to do anything about it. But here's the catch: when you constantly play the victim, you're actually giving away your power. And not just that, you're turning yourself into someone others look at with pity or disdain rather than respect. When you play the victim, you're not just saying, things are hard, you're saying, I can't do anything about it. You begin to believe that life is happening to you, and you're just helplessly going along for the ride. But here's the thing: that mindset is one of the biggest traps you can fall into. Stoicism teaches us that while we can't control everything that happens to us, we can always control how we respond. The events in our lives might be chaotic, unpredictable, and downright unfair at times, but it's our response that defines who we are. Now, I know what you're probably thinking. But life's not always fair. Things happen that I don't deserve, and it feels like I'm the one who gets the short end of the stick. And yeah, that's true. Life isn't always fair. Bad things happen. But playing the victim isn't about acknowledging those struggles, it's about choosing to let those struggles define you, to give them all the power. When you lean into the role of the victim, you're saying that you can't rise above your circumstances. You're letting them hold you back, and in doing so, you're giving away control over your life. The Stoics, like Epictetus, were obsessed with this idea of separating what's within our control from what isn't. The things we can't control, like the actions of others or the events that befall us, are not worth getting caught up in. They're not the source of our happiness or unhappiness. What matters is our response. Playing the victim means ignoring that wisdom. It means giving away your agency, your ability to take control of the situation and shape your own narrative. And the problem with playing the victim is that it doesn't just affect your mindset, it affects how others see you. People might sympathize with you for a while, but eventually, that sympathy wears thin. When you constantly focus on how life is unfair or how you're always the one who suffers, others start to feel like they're dealing with someone who's stuck, someone who's unwilling to rise above their circumstances. It's not inspiring. It doesn't build respect. People don't want to follow or support someone who seems powerless to change their own life. And that's the kicker. When you play the victim, you're not just trapping yourself in a cycle of helplessness, you're also pushing people away. The more you hold on to that victim mentality, the more it becomes a part of your identity. You start to see yourself as someone who can't win, someone who's always dealt a bad hand. But this is a limiting belief. It's a belief that cuts off all possibilities for growth and change. You become stuck in the past, in the story of things that went wrong, instead of focusing on what you can do now to move forward. Playing the victim also keeps you from seeing your own potential. When you constantly focus on how things happen to you, you're not paying attention to how you can take action and make things better. It's a passive mindset. But life requires action. It requires you to take responsibility for your part in the situation, to make choices that move you forward, even when it's tough. Stoicism encourages us to rise above adversity, not by denying the hardships we face, but by acknowledging them and choosing to respond with strength and purpose. And let's not forget, playing the victim keeps you from building resilience. Every time you step back and say, "This is too hard, I can't do anything about it," you're teaching your mind to avoid challenges, to shy away from growth. But the more you face difficulties head-on, the more you build mental toughness. Every obstacle you overcome is another step toward becoming a stronger, more capable person. So, what's the takeaway here? Playing the victim is a habit that keeps you stuck in a cycle of helplessness and self-pity. It prevents you from taking responsibility for your life and your actions, and it makes others see you as weak or incapable. Instead of dwelling on what you can't control, take a step back and ask yourself, what can I control? How can I change my response to this situation? How can I grow from it? By shifting your mindset from victimhood to empowerment, you'll not only begin to see yourself differently, you'll also inspire others to do the same. Number 11, overcommitting without prioritization. Overcommitting is like loading your plate at a buffet. You grab a little of everything, and it feels great at first. But soon, you realize you can't actually finish it all. You're overwhelmed, overstuffed, and no one is impressed. That's the problem with saying yes to everything. It might seem harmless in the moment, but overcommitting without prioritization is a fast track to chaos, burnout, and, let's be honest, disappointing everyone involved, including yourself. Here's the thing, when you overcommit, you spread yourself thin. You end up juggling too many tasks, and none of them get the attention they deserve. It's like trying to hold water in your hands. You can only keep so much before it starts slipping through your fingers. People might admire your enthusiasm at first, but when you consistently fail to deliver or show up half-heartedly, that admiration turns into frustration. Nobody respects someone who bites off more than they can chew and then fumbles to keep up. Why do we do it, though? Why do we agree to take on so much? Sometimes, it's because we want to be liked. We think saying yes will make people see us as reliable, capable, or accommodating. Other times, it's ego, feeling like we can handle everything thrown our way, no matter how unrealistic. And let's not forget the fear of missing out. We overcommit because we don't want to miss opportunities or let a chance slip by. But here's the kicker: when you're drowning in commitments, you're not really showing up for any of them. It's the ultimate self-sabotage. What makes overcommitting even worse is the lack of prioritization. When everything is important, nothing is important. You're running from task to task, constantly putting out fires, but never actually making progress. It's exhausting. And it's not just about the work. You start losing respect from others because you're always overwhelmed, always late, and always scrambling. That's not the impression you want to leave. Stoic philosophy has a lot to say about this. It's all about focusing on what you can control and what truly matters. Marcus Aurelius would probably tell you to stop scattering your energy in 100 directions and focus on what's essential. The truth is, life is finite. Your time, energy, and attention are limited resources. Overcommitting without prioritizing is like trying to pour from an empty cup. At some point, you run out, and then what? You're left feeling drained, ineffective, and, let's be real, disappointed in yourself. Now, let's talk about how this habit makes others see you. When you overcommit, you might think you're coming across as hardworking or ambitious, but often it's the opposite. People see someone who's disorganized, unreliable, and maybe even a little desperate to please. It's not a good look. Contrast that with someone who knows their limits, chooses their commitments wisely, and follows through with excellence. That's the person people respect. That's the person people want to work with, trust, and admire. Breaking free from the overcommitment trap isn't easy, but it's worth it. The first step is learning to say no, and I get it, saying no is hard. It feels uncomfortable, maybe even selfish. But the reality is, every time you say yes to something, you're saying no to something else. The question is, are you saying no to the things that actually matter? Another tip? Get crystal clear on your priorities. What's important to you? What aligns with your values and goals? If a commitment doesn't fit into those categories, it's probably not worth your time. And remember, prioritizing doesn't mean doing less, it means doing the right things. It's about working smarter, not harder. And here's the beautiful part: when you stop overcommitting and start prioritizing, you'll notice a shift. You'll feel less stressed, more in control, and way more accomplished. People will see you as someone who's grounded, focused, and intentional, a stark contrast to the frazzled, overwhelmed version of you they might be used to. That shift in perception? It's huge. It changes how people treat you and how you treat yourself. So, the next time someone asks you to take on one more thing, pause. Think about your existing commitments. Ask yourself if this aligns with what truly matters to you. If it doesn't, say no. And don't feel guilty about it. Saying no to the wrong things is how you make space for the right ones. And that's how you go from being overcommit and overwhelmed to being respected and unstoppable. Number 12, lack of self-discipline. Let's not sugarcoat it. A lack of self-discipline is one of those habits that instantly makes people lose respect for you. It's like carrying around a flashing neon sign that says, "I can't handle myself." And let's be honest, no one's impressed by that. If anything, it makes people doubt your abilities, not just in the big, important areas of life, but even in the small stuff. Here's the thing about self-discipline: it's not just about following some strict, joyless routine. It's about proving to yourself and to others that you have control over your actions, your emotions, and your decisions. When you lack that, it's obvious. It shows in the way you miss deadlines, overindulge, or avoid challenges because you just don't feel like dealing with them. People pick up on that, and trust me, it doesn't make them think, "Wow, what a free spirit." It makes them think, "Can this person even be counted on?" And the truth is, they might not be wrong. Self-discipline is the foundation of everything meaningful. It's what helps you stick to your word, show up when it matters, and push through when things get tough. Without it, you're like a boat without a rudder, drifting aimlessly and hoping for the best. Sure, you might end up somewhere decent by luck, but chances are, you'll miss a lot of opportunities along the way. What makes this habit so damaging is that it doesn't just hurt your reputation, it hurts your potential. Every time you skip the hard stuff in favor of what's easy, you reinforce a pattern of avoidance. And here's the kicker: the more you avoid, the harder it gets to face challenges when they inevitably come your way. It's a vicious cycle, and breaking out of it isn't easy, but it's absolutely necessary. Now, let's talk about how this looks in real life. Lack of self-discipline shows up in a million little ways. Procrastination is a big one. You know you need to get something done, but instead, you scroll mindlessly, binge watch, or convince yourself that you'll start tomorrow. Spoiler alert, tomorrow never comes. Then there's overindulgence, whether it's food, spending, or distractions. You know it's too much, but you tell yourself it's fine. One more bite, one more dollar, one more hour wasted. And suddenly, those little indulgences add up to something big. But the most damaging part of lacking self-discipline? It's the message it sends to yourself. Every time you give in to procrastination, temptation, or laziness, you're telling yourself that your comfort is more important than your growth. That your future self doesn't matter as much as how you feel right now. And that mindset? It's a recipe for mediocrity. Now, let's flip the script. Building self-discipline doesn't mean becoming a robot who never takes a break or enjoys life. It's about balance. It's about knowing when to push and when to rest. And it starts with small, consistent actions. You don't need to overhaul your entire life overnight. Just commit to doing one thing every day that moves you closer to your goals. Start with something manageable. Maybe it's waking up 15 minutes earlier to meditate or plan your day. Maybe it's cutting back on distractions for an hour so you can focus on something meaningful. The key is to build trust with yourself. Show yourself that when you say you're going to do something, you'll actually follow through. Over time, those small wins add up. They build momentum. And before you know it, you're not just someone with discipline, you're someone who inspires it in others. Because let's face it, people admire self-discipline. It's a rare quality, and when people see it in you, they know you're someone who takes life seriously. So, if self-discipline isn't your strong suit right now, don't beat yourself up. But don't ignore it either. Start small, stay consistent, and remember this: every time you choose discipline over distraction, you're not just earning the respect of others, you're earning the respect of yourself. And that's the kind of respect that matters most. Number 13, living in the past or future. Living in the past or future, it's one of those habits that can silently creep into your life, making you miss the present, the only time that truly exists. It's like you're constantly either ruminating over what's already happened or anxiously anticipating what's to come, and all the while, the here and now slips away unnoticed. You might not even realize you're doing it, but it's a surefire way to rob yourself of joy, peace, and fulfillment. When you live in the past, you're trapped. You're stuck replaying events, rehashing mistakes, or clinging to the way things used to be. You might catch yourself thinking, if only things had turned out differently, or I could have done that better. But here's the problem: you can't change the past. You can reflect on it, learn from it, sure, but you can't live there. The past is gone, and by fixating on it, you're tying yourself to a time that no longer exists. In doing so, you limit yourself. Your energy gets drained, your focus is misdirected, and you miss out on the opportunities right in front of you. Stoicism teaches us that we can't control what's happened, only how we respond to it. Living in the past is the opposite of that. It's letting the past dictate your present, rather than taking control of your thoughts and actions in the now. On the other hand, living in the future comes with its own set of problems. It's the constant what-if game. What if things don't go as planned? What if I fail? What if I succeed but it's not as great as I imagined? The future is full of unknowns, and while it's important to plan and set goals, constantly worrying about what might happen is like trying to predict a storm that hasn't even formed yet. By focusing too much on the future, you're missing out on the beauty and the power of today. You're putting all your eggs in a basket that may not even exist as you imagine it. Living in the future is also a way of avoiding the present. If you're always focused on what's ahead, you're never truly present in your life as it is right now. There's a sense of dissatisfaction in that, a nagging feeling that you're always waiting for something, rather than embracing what's in front of you. Think about it. How many times have you found yourself counting down the days until something happens, thinking that once it does, everything will be better? But what about the moments in between? By focusing solely on the future, you end up missing out on the richness of the current moment. You're chasing something that may or may not come, instead of appreciating what's here now. From a Stoic perspective, both living in the past and the future are forms of distraction. They take us away from the present moment, where we actually have the power to act, think, and make a difference in our lives. The Stoics would argue that the only time that truly matters is the present, because it's the only time we can control. If you're consumed by what's already happened or obsessed with what's coming next, you're wasting the most important time of all, the now. And the kicker is that this habit of living in the past or future can make you look weak to others. When you're always looking back, it can come across as though you haven't moved on, that you're stuck in some old story. When you're always looking ahead, you seem like you're never satisfied with what you have. Either way, it's hard for people to respect someone who's not living in the moment. People respect those who take action, who deal with life head-on, and who embrace the present with all its challenges and opportunities. Living in the present is an art, and it requires practice. It's about engaging with life as it is right now, without letting the past or the future steal your attention. Stoicism encourages us to be mindful of our thoughts and our reactions. It's not about ignoring the past or pretending the future doesn't matter, it's about putting them in their proper place. The past is a lesson, not a prison, and the future is a possibility, not a certainty. By focusing on what's within our control, the present, we empower ourselves to live fully, without being bogged down by regrets or anxieties. So, how do you stop living in the past or future? Start by being more aware of your thoughts. Catch yourself when you're spiraling into what-ifs or replaying old mistakes. Bring yourself back to the present moment. Focus on what you can do right now, no matter how small, to move forward. Whether that's taking a deep breath, doing something productive, or simply appreciating what's around you, the present is where you can make a difference. In the end, it's not about erasing the past or ignoring the future. It's about giving them the proper perspective and focusing on what's happening right now. Because, as the Stoics would say, the present is where the true power lies. Number 14. Being overly busy without purpose. Let's be real, being busy for the sake of being busy is one of the most overrated traps we can fall into. It's almost like a badge of honor these days. People walk around saying, "I'm so busy," like it's some kind of flex. But here's the thing, If all that busyness isn't moving you towards something meaningful, it's just noise. And people can see right through it. They don't respect hustle for hustle's sake, they respect purpose, intention, and results. Being overly busy without purpose isn't just unproductive, it's exhausting. You spend your days jumping from one task to the next, crossing things off a never-ending to-do list, but at the end of it all, you're left wondering, what did I actually accomplish? Spoiler, probably not much. That's because busyness doesn't equal progress. It just feels like it. It's a clever little illusion that tricks you into thinking you're doing something important when, in reality, you're just spinning your wheels. Here's the kicker, this kind of busyness doesn't just waste your time, it damages how others perceive you. When people see someone who's always busy but never seems to have a clear direction, they start to lose respect. They see someone who's reactive instead of proactive, someone who's trying to look productive rather than actually being productive. It's like you're running a race with no finish line. Sure, you're moving fast, but where are you even going? The Stoics had a lot to say about this kind of aimless activity. They were big on focusing only on what matters, cutting through the noise, and living with intention. Marcus Aurelius, for instance, believed in doing fewer things but doing them well. Imagine if you applied that principle to your life. Instead of scattering your energy across a million meaningless tasks, you'd focus on the handful of things that actually move the needle. Sounds freeing, doesn't it? The problem with purposeless busyness is that it becomes a crutch. It keeps you from facing the bigger questions. Why am I doing this? What am I working toward? Is this the best use of my time? These aren't comfortable questions to ask, but avoiding them by staying busy only makes things worse. You end up filling your days with distractions instead of digging deep and figuring out what actually matters. Let's not ignore the toll this takes on your mental and physical well-being. Constant busyness, especially when it lacks purpose, is draining. It leaves you feeling burned out, unfulfilled, and disconnected from the things that truly make life meaningful. And ironically, the busier you are, the less time you have for reflection, for recentering yourself. It's a vicious cycle, one that leaves you empty-handed despite all the effort. And here's another harsh truth, people notice when you're busy without purpose. They see someone who's always rushing but never quite delivering. Someone who's caught up in a whirlwind of activity but lacks focus. Over time, that impression sticks. You don't come across as hardworking or dedicated, you come across as scattered, maybe even chaotic. And let's face it, that's not the reputation you want. Breaking out of this habit starts with a simple but powerful shift. Stop glorifying busyness and start prioritizing purpose. Ask yourself, why am I doing this? If the answer doesn't align with your goals or values, maybe it doesn't need to be done. Learn to say no to the tasks and commitments that don't matter. It's not about doing more, it's about doing the right things. This might mean cutting back, slowing down, or even stepping away from certain activities altogether. And that's okay. What matters is that you're aligning your energy with what's truly important. When you do this, you'll notice a shift, not just in how you feel, but in how others perceive you. Suddenly, you're not just busy, you're intentional. People will see someone who's calm, focused, and in control, a stark contrast to the frantic busyness they might be used to. So, let's ditch the busy for busy's sake mindset. Your time and energy are too valuable to waste on meaningless activity. Instead, embrace a life of purpose, where every action is deliberate and aligned with your goals. Not only will you feel more fulfilled, but you'll earn the respect of those around you. Because at the end of the day, it's not about how much you do, it's about how much of it actually matters. Number 15. Reacting without reflection. Let's be honest, reacting without thinking it through is like playing darts blindfolded. Sure, you might hit the target once in a while, but most of the time, you're just throwing chaos around and hoping for the best. And you know what? It's not a great look. When you snap, overreact, or blurt out the first thing that comes to mind, it makes people question whether you have control over yourself. Spoiler alert, they probably won't be too impressed. Why does this habit make such a bad impression? Because it screams impulsiveness. It tells people you're more about knee-jerk reactions than thoughtful responses. And let's face it, nobody respects someone who seems like they're at the mercy of their emotions. It's not just the reaction itself, it's the lack of pause, the absence of that moment where you stop and think, wait, what's the best way to handle this? Here's the deal, life is full of moments that test your patience. Things don't go your way, someone says something you don't like, or you feel a surge of frustration bubbling up. What separates people who are respected from those who aren't is how they handle those moments. If you're quick to snap or lash out, people start to see you as unpredictable, or worse, immature. Now, don't get me wrong. Reacting is human. We all have triggers, and it's easy to let emotions take over when something catches you off guard. But here's the problem, when you let those emotions dictate your actions without reflection, you end up saying or doing things that you'll probably regret later. And the kicker? You can't take it back. Once the words are out or the action's done, it's out there. Think about the ripple effect this has. When you react without reflection, you might come across as defensive, rude, or even combative. People may start to avoid bringing things up with you because they're worried about how you'll respond. And over time, this habit can chip away at your relationships, whether it's with friends, coworkers, or anyone else in your life. On the flip side, learning to pause before reacting is a total game changer. That pause? That's where your power lies. It's the space where you can choose your response instead of letting your emotions choose for you. It's where you can decide, do I need to address this right now? Or am I about to say something I don't mean? It's not about bottling up your feelings, it's about channeling them in a way that's thoughtful and productive. And guess what? People notice when you take that pause. It shows maturity. It shows emotional intelligence. It tells people, this is someone who thinks before they act. And that kind of behavior earns respect, big time. So how do you start practicing this? It's simple in theory but takes effort in practice. First, notice your triggers. Pay attention to the things that set you off, whether it's criticism, interruptions, or something else entirely. Once you're aware of those triggers, you can start to anticipate them and prepare yourself to pause instead of react. Next, focus on your breath. It sounds cheesy, but it works. When you feel the urge to snap or react, take a deep breath. Count to 5 if you need to. That tiny moment can create just enough space for you to think clearly. Finally, ask yourself a question before you respond. Something like, is this worth the energy? Or what's the best way to handle this? Those few seconds of reflection can completely change the outcome of the situation and how people perceive you. At the end of the day, reacting without reflection isn't just a bad habit, it's a sign that you're letting emotions control you instead of the other way around. But the good news? You can change this. It's all about building the habit of pausing, reflecting, and choosing your response intentionally. And trust me, when you master this, people will notice. They'll see you as someone who's composed, thoughtful, and in control. Someone who can handle tough situations with grace and clarity. And that's a reputation worth having. So next time you feel the urge to react, pause. Breathe. Think. Then respond. You'll thank yourself later, and so will everyone else. Breaking bad habits isn't easy, but the rewards are life-changing. By embracing Stoic principles, you can rise above and become someone who commands respect and admiration. In the last section, let's go over awful habits that make people disrespect you. Number 1, gossiping about others. Gossiping about others, it's one of those habits we might brush off as harmless, but in reality, it carries a heavy price. It might feel like a way to bond, to share some insider info, or just to fill the silence, but gossip is a double-edged sword. It cuts both ways. Not only does it hurt the person you're gossiping about, but it also chases away the respect others might have for you. First, let's be real, gossip is toxic. Sure, it might seem like a casual chat over a cup of coffee or a quick comment behind someone's back, but in truth, it's a form of betrayal. When you gossip, you're spreading negativity. You're talking about someone else's flaws, mistakes, or embarrassing moments, often exaggerating or twisting the truth in the process. Even if it's not deliberate, it doesn't take much for things to spiral. The more you engage in this kind of behavior, the more people begin to see you as someone who is willing to tear others down when they aren't around. Now, what's worse is that it doesn't stop at just the person you're gossiping about. The more you talk about others in this way, the more people start to wonder what you say about them when they're not around. And here's where it gets tricky. Once that seed of doubt is planted, it's hard to undo. People will start questioning your loyalty. They'll wonder if you're the type to gossip about them as well, and suddenly, you're the last person they'd trust with their personal life. In a way, gossiping about others makes you the villain in a story that no one wants to be a part of. Let's flip this for a second. Imagine, for a moment, that you choose not to gossip. Instead of joining in on the latest gossip, you decide to remain silent or change the topic. Not only does this make you more likable, but it also shows strength. It takes courage to step away from the drama and to resist the urge to indulge in petty conversation. You become a person who others can trust. A person who won't twist their words behind their backs. A person who respects the dignity of others, and that's something that will earn you respect in return. This is where Stoic philosophy kicks in. The Stoics were all about living virtuously, and part of that virtue was maintaining a high level of integrity. They understood that the more you engage in destructive habits like gossip, the more you lower your own character. They recognized that gossip wasn't just harmful to others, it was harmful to the soul of the person doing the gossiping. To maintain inner peace and respect, you need to live authentically, without resorting to undermining others for the sake of a temporary ego boost or cheap entertainment. When you gossip, you're essentially giving up control over your emotions. You're allowing negativity to dictate your conversations. And that's the opposite of self-control, which is central to Stoicism. A true Stoic doesn't need to talk badly about others to feel good about themselves. Instead, they focus on their own actions, their own growth, and their own mindset. They know that in the grand scheme of things, what others do or don't do doesn't diminish their own worth. So they don't need to gossip to feel superior. Finally, let's talk about the long-term impact. If you gossip enough, you begin to build a reputation. Not the kind of reputation you want. You'll become known as the person who can't be trusted, the one who always has something to say about others but rarely ever anything kind. Respect is earned over time, and once it's lost because of habits like gossiping, it's tough to regain. People remember how you made them feel, and they'll remember how you spoke about others. The words you use have weight, and they matter. Even if you don't mean to harm anyone, the act of gossiping sends a message about who you are. So, if you want to be the kind of person people genuinely respect, you need to let go of gossip. Choose silence when others start tearing someone down. Speak up when you see others being unfairly judged. Your actions, your words, and your integrity will speak volumes. In the end, it's not about what you say about others, it's about how you choose to live, how you choose to carry yourself, and how you treat people when they're not around. That's where true respect comes from. Number 2, acting arrogantly or boasting. Alright, let's dive into something that we've all come across at some point, acting arrogantly or boasting. It's one of those habits that seem harmless to the person doing it, but in reality, it can cause people to lose respect for you faster than you can say humble brag. There's something about it that just rubs people the wrong way, and it's no surprise. After all, no one really wants to hear about how amazing you think you are, day in and day out. We all know someone, or maybe we've been that person ourselves, who can't stop talking about their accomplishments, their successes, or their latest incredible experience. It gets exhausting. And here's the kicker, it doesn't make you look as great as you might think. Instead, it creates distance between you and others. So why is it such a big deal? Well, when you act arrogantly or boast, it's a sign that you're not really aware of how your behavior is affecting those around you. It's like you're sending a signal that you think you're better than everyone else. And let's be real, nobody likes feeling like they're inferior to someone else, even if that person is just trying to pump up their own ego. That's where Stoic philosophy can really help us understand what's going on beneath the surface. Stoicism teaches that humility is a virtue. It encourages us to live a life of quiet dignity, focusing on our actions rather than making a show of our achievements. The idea is that true strength comes from within. You don't need to constantly remind others of how strong, successful, or brilliant you are because your actions will speak for themselves. Stoics understand that if you're always parading your accomplishments in front of others, it's an indication that you're insecure. In fact, you're probably overcompensating for a lack of confidence. So, instead of winning respect, you actually end up pushing people away. When you boast, you're also engaging in a kind of mental shortcut. You're trying to get validation without putting in the actual effort to build relationships. It's easy to tell people how great you are, but real connection comes from showing people through your character and actions. Boasting is lazy. It's like trying to climb a ladder that's leaning against the wrong wall. It's not going to get you where you want to be. Now, let's think about it from the perspective of the person on the receiving end. How do you feel when someone is constantly bragging? It's a little uncomfortable, right? Maybe you start wondering if they're trying to prove something to you, or if they're genuinely that insecure. Either way, it creates a disconnect. The people who matter, those who truly respect you, don't need constant reminders of your greatness. They already see it in the way you live your life, the decisions you make, and how you treat others. And let's not forget how boasting can come across as inconsiderate. It's almost like you're expecting others to stop what they're doing and admire you. In reality, people are busy with their own lives, and most of the time, they're not paying attention to the things you think they are. So when you boast, it feels almost like you're trying to force them to share in your personal story. It takes the focus away from the group, from collaboration, and makes it all about you. In a way, it's a distraction. And no one respects someone who can't see beyond their own ego. The Stoic approach? It's about restraint. It's about acknowledging your achievements privately, not flaunting them to the world. When you do something impressive, it's enough to know that you've done it. You don't need others to affirm your worth. True self-worth comes from within, from knowing that you're doing the best you can in the face of life's challenges. So, the next time you're tempted to boast or act arrogantly, take a step back and ask yourself, is this really necessary? Do I need to tell everyone how great I am, or can I just let my actions do the talking? In the end, people respect those who are humble, those who don't need to remind others of their value. Instead, they let their presence, their actions, and their character speak volumes. It's the quiet strength, the unspoken confidence, that draws respect. And when you embrace that mindset, you'll notice that people will naturally be drawn to you, not because you told them how great you are, but because you let them see it for themselves. Number 3, being unreliable or inconsistent. Being unreliable or inconsistent is one of those habits that can destroy relationships, whether they're personal, professional, or even casual. Imagine you're someone people turn to for support, guidance, or simply to get things done, but every time they rely on you, you're either late, unavailable, or don't follow through. What happens? Trust erodes. The bond weakens. people start to doubt you, and that's a dangerous place to be. The thing is, inconsistency isn't just about missing deadlines or forgetting commitments. It's about sending mixed signals to others, making them second-guess your reliability. Think about it. If you promise to show up at a certain time, but then show up late every time, what do people learn? They don't learn to expect you at 5 p.m. They learn to expect you to be unreliable. This can happen in any context. Whether it's a friend who says they'll hang out but always cancels, or a colleague who says they'll take care of something but drops the ball every single time, the result is the same: people stop depending on you. Inconsistency creates doubt, and doubt is one of the quickest ways to lose respect. People don't like to feel like they're gambling when they rely on someone. It's uncomfortable. You become that person who, despite all their good intentions, always leaves others questioning whether you'll actually follow through. And let's face it, when people can't rely on you, they're less likely to respect you. Now, let's talk about how this habit eats away at your credibility. In Stoic philosophy, consistency and reliability are crucial. Think of it like building a reputation. Every action you take either adds to or detracts from how people perceive you. When you show up as you say you will, time after time, you build trust. But the moment you start backing out, making excuses, or failing to show up when you said you would, your reputation starts to crumble. It's like trying to build a house on sand. It just can't stand the test of time. There's also a deeper layer to this inconsistency, something that affects your own self-respect. When you're constantly unreliable, you're not just letting others down. You're letting yourself down too. You start to see yourself as someone who can't be counted on, and that internal perception eats away at your confidence. You know you can do better, but your actions don't match your words. It's like living in a constant state of cognitive dissonance, where what you believe about yourself and how you act are at odds. And that's exhausting. So, you end up feeling worse about yourself, which only fuels the cycle of unreliability. From a Stoic standpoint, the goal is to be in control of your actions and your character. Being consistent is part of living a virtuous life, because it means you're someone others can trust, and that you can trust yourself. You're not tossing your commitments to the wind based on how you feel that day or what distractions come your way. You show up. You do the work. You follow through. And in doing so, you cultivate integrity, not just with others, but with yourself. So, what's the fix for this? How do you break the cycle of inconsistency? It starts with being honest about what you can commit to and what you can't. Don't overpromise. Be realistic. And when you do commit to something, give it your best shot. If you realize that you're about to miss a deadline or fail to meet an expectation, communicate early, apologize, and make up for it as best you can. Own your actions. This doesn't just show maturity, but it shows that you value the time and trust of others. Consistency isn't about being perfect. It's about being reliable, about showing up, keeping your word, and following through. People respect those who live by these principles. The more you build this into your daily life, the more people will start to rely on you, and eventually, your self-respect will be just as solid as your reputation. And that, my friend, is a foundation worth building. Number 4, avoiding eye contact during conversations. Avoiding eye contact during conversations, it's such a small thing, right? But it can have a huge impact on how people perceive you. It's easy to think that looking someone in the eye isn't that big of a deal. After all, maybe you're just shy or maybe you feel a little awkward in certain social situations. But here's the thing, when you avoid eye contact, it can signal so much more than just nerves. It can make you come across as untrustworthy, disengaged, or even disrespectful. And here's the kicker, it's a habit that's surprisingly easy to break once you understand its consequences. Let's start with the basics. Eye contact is one of the most powerful forms of nonverbal communication. It's a way to show that you're present, that you're listening, and that you care about what the other person is saying. When you avoid eye contact, it's almost like you're sending a message that you're not fully engaged. It can give the impression that you're either bored, distracted, or simply don't think the person you're talking to is worth your attention. And that's not something anyone enjoys feeling. Now, imagine being in a conversation where the other person won't look you in the eye. It's disorienting. It feels like you're not being heard. You might even start to feel like the person doesn't respect you enough to give you their full attention. And when that happens, the trust starts to fray. Trust is a fragile thing, and once it's damaged, it's hard to repair. It's the little things, like eye contact, that either build or erode that trust. From a Stoic perspective, eye contact plays a key role in living with integrity. Stoics believed in showing up fully in the present moment, giving your complete attention to the task at hand, and respecting others. If you're avoiding eye contact, you're not giving your full self to the conversation. You're holding something back. Stoicism teaches us to be honest, to be straightforward, and to be mindful of our actions. Avoiding eye contact undermines that. It's a subtle way of disengaging, of stepping back from the interaction instead of leaning into it with openness. Think about it this way: when you look someone in the eye, you're signaling that you're open, that you're willing to connect. It's a display of strength and confidence. On the flip side, avoiding eye contact often comes off as a sign of insecurity. It's like you're hiding something, even if you aren't. The other person might start to wonder, why aren't they looking at me? Are they lying? Are they uncomfortable? The doubts can build up quickly, and before you know it, the respect you could have earned slips away. But here's the interesting thing: eye contact doesn't just help with trust. It's also a way to show empathy. When you make eye contact with someone, it's easier to pick up on their emotions. Are they anxious? Excited? Upset? You can tell a lot from their eyes, and that makes you a better communicator. It helps you adjust your tone, your words, and even your body language to match the emotional current of the conversation. If you're constantly looking away, you miss all of that. You become disconnected from the flow of the conversation, and it can make the other person feel isolated or dismissed. It's also important to note that avoiding eye contact can create a feeling of power imbalance. When you look someone in the eye, you're putting yourself on equal footing with them. You're not looking down, you're not looking away, you're facing them, standing shoulder to shoulder in a way. But when you look away, it can make you appear subordinate or hesitant. It's almost like you're not willing to meet the other person at their level. That shift can affect the way people see you. They may start to view you as less authoritative, less confident, or even less worthy of respect. But, let's be honest, it's easy to fall into this habit. Maybe it's due to social anxiety, maybe it's just a lack of awareness. Either way, the good news is that it's something you can work on. The key is to practice. Start small, by making brief eye contact throughout your conversations. You don't need to stare someone down, that's equally uncomfortable. Just aim for natural, steady eye contact that shows you're engaged and present. Over time, it'll become second nature. When you choose to look someone in the eye, you're not just making them feel respected, you're also showing your self-respect. It's a simple, but powerful act of acknowledging your own worth and the worth of the person you're speaking to. And that's what makes eye contact one of the simplest yet most profound ways to build respect in your relationships. Avoiding it? That's a habit you'll want to leave behind. Number 5. Displaying inconsistent body language. When it comes to how we communicate, most of us focus a lot on the words we say, right? But what about the silent language, the one we speak without even realizing? Our body language tells a story, often one we don't even intend to tell. And here's the thing: inconsistent body language can make people lose respect for you faster than you think. One minute you're acting confident, the next you're closed off or defensive. It's confusing, it's off-putting, and it can make people question your authenticity. Let's break this down a bit. Imagine you're in a conversation with someone, and they're telling you something important. They say all the right things, but their body says something else. Maybe their arms are crossed, their eyes are shifting, or they're fidgeting nervously. What happens? You start to doubt them, don't you? You can't put your finger on it, but you feel like something's off. It's as if their words and their actions aren't lining up, and that creates a disconnect. When your body language doesn't match your words, people start to feel like they can't trust you. And when trust is shaken, respect starts to fade. Stoic philosophy teaches us the importance of being congruent, of aligning our thoughts, words, and actions. When you say something, the way you carry yourself should reflect that. It's about authenticity and integrity. If you claim to be confident but your body is sending all sorts of mixed signals, like avoiding eye contact or slumping your shoulders, then you're not really being true to yourself. And that inconsistency can make others see you as unreliable, insecure, or even fake. Think about it, if your words and your body are saying different things, people are going to trust the body. We're all experts at reading nonverbal cues, even if we don't realize it. It's built into us. We notice when someone's posture is off, when they're leaning away from us, or when they avoid making direct eye contact. These are subtle signals, but they matter. A person might say they're excited to help or be part of something, but if their body is pulling away or they look tense, the message they're really sending is, "I'm not into this," or "I don't feel comfortable." Inconsistent body language also makes you harder to read. If you're constantly sending mixed signals, people won't know how to approach you. Are you open to conversation, or are you closed off? Are you confident, or are you second-guessing yourself? When you're unpredictable in your body language, it becomes exhausting for others to engage with you. They'll be too focused on trying to figure out what you're actually trying to say to really hear what you're saying. Now, let's talk about how this fits into the Stoic mindset. One of the central principles of Stoicism is controlling what's within your power, your thoughts, your reactions, your actions. Your body language falls under this umbrella. You can choose to align your actions with your words. You can choose to stand tall, make eye contact, and show that you're fully present in the moment. That consistency not only makes you more relatable, but it also projects confidence and integrity. It shows that you are grounded in who you are and that you are someone who can be trusted. But here's the catch: this doesn't mean you need to be perfect. You don't have to maintain the ideal posture all the time or constantly put on a show of confidence. Stoicism isn't about pretending to be something you're not. It's about being true to yourself. It's about managing your internal state so that it's reflected in your external behavior. If you're feeling insecure or uncertain, it's okay to acknowledge that. But don't let it drive your actions in a way that creates inconsistency. If you're nervous, acknowledge the nerves, but still stand tall, breathe deeply, and be present. Inconsistent body language doesn't just make you seem untrustworthy, it can also signal a lack of self-control. When your body is all over the place, it might make people question whether you can control your emotions, your reactions, or your decisions. In contrast, someone who can maintain steady, consistent body language even in challenging situations shows composure. That's powerful. That's someone who can handle stress, someone who can lead, someone who others are more likely to respect. So, what can you do? Start by becoming more aware of your body language. Pay attention to how you carry yourself in different situations. Are you standing tall? Are your arms open, or are they crossed? Are you making eye contact? These small things matter more than you think. When your words and actions align, you'll notice a shift, not only in how others respond to you, but also in how you feel about yourself. You'll begin to radiate confidence and authenticity. And that's the kind of person people respect. Number 6, showing up late frequently or not respecting others' time. Showing up late. It's one of those little habits that might seem like it doesn't matter much, but over time, it can build up and leave people feeling disrespected, frustrated, and even resentful. It's easy to think, oh, it's just a few minutes, but let's be real, every time you show up late, you're telling others that your time is more important than theirs. And no one likes that feeling. The thing about time is, it's the one resource we can't get back. We can make more money, gain new skills, buy new things. But time? Once it's gone, it's gone. So when you show up late, you're not just wasting someone else's time, you're disrespecting something that's irreplaceable to them. And that's a tough pill to swallow, especially when you're the one doing it over and over again. But here's the kicker, it's not just about being late. It's about the mindset behind it. It reflects a lack of consideration, a lack of awareness about how your actions impact those around you. When you keep showing up late, it can seem like you don't value others. It sends the message that you think your time is more precious, and theirs is expendable. And that's a quick way to lose respect, not just from friends or colleagues, but from anyone who values their own time. Stoicism teaches us that we should treat time with the utmost respect. We're reminded that time is fleeting, and the wise person is the one who uses it wisely. To be late, consistently, shows a lack of self-control and discipline. You might think it's no big deal to slip in 5 minutes after the agreed-upon time, but in reality, it's a sign of a deeper issue, one that undermines your character. Time management isn't just about organizing your calendar, it's a reflection of your personal values and priorities. Now, let's take it a step further. Have you ever noticed how showing up late doesn't just affect the person waiting for you? It can throw everything off. Meetings get pushed back, plans get changed, and the flow of the day gets disrupted. But even more than that, it adds unnecessary stress to the situation. People feel rushed, frazzled, and impatient. It creates tension, and not the good kind. Suddenly, the simple act of being late doesn't just become about you, it becomes about how it affects the group dynamic. And that's where things start to unravel. There's also something about consistency here. Once you've established a habit of being late, it becomes harder to break. It's like you've created a reputation for yourself that people start to expect. And guess what? Expectations don't work in your favor. People don't respect you because they know you'll show up late. And that lack of respect is a tough thing to shake off once it's set in. But what's the fix? How do you break free from this pattern? First off, it's about shifting your mindset. You need to start seeing time differently. It's not just about punching the clock or getting through a task, it's about honoring the people you're with, the commitments you've made, and the life you're trying to live. When you show up late, it's a reflection of a deeper disregard for the value of time itself. It also means owning your actions. If you know you're prone to being late, plan better. Set reminders, prep in advance, leave earlier than you think you need to. And if, for some reason, you are late, don't make excuses. Apologize sincerely. Acknowledge the impact it had. Show that you recognize your mistake and that you'll do better next time. People will appreciate that level of self-awareness and accountability. Ultimately, being on time isn't just about punctuality, it's about respecting the people around you. It's about building trust and showing that you value others, their time, and their efforts. When you make a habit of showing up when you say you will, you're telling the world that you're someone who can be relied upon. That, my friend, is the kind of person people respect, someone who understands that time is precious, not just for them, but for everyone. And in the grand scheme of things, that's the kind of habit that builds strong relationships, both personally and professionally. Number 7, talking excessively about your achievements or problems. Talking excessively about your achievements or problems, it's something we've all been guilty of at one point or another, right? We've all had those moments where we want to share how great we're doing or vent about everything that's going wrong. It can feel good in the moment, almost like you're unloading some heavy baggage, but if you're constantly bringing it up, it can have a major impact on how people see you. It's easy to slip into this habit without realizing how it can come across to others, but trust me, it's one that can quickly turn people off. First off, let's talk about achievements. We all have goals, we all strive for success. That's a given. But when we talk about our achievements non-stop, we risk crossing the line between sharing our pride and coming off as arrogant. There's a fine balance between letting people know about your accomplishments and turning every conversation into a self-congratulatory monologue. And if you're constantly bringing up your wins, big or small, it can start to feel like you're not really interested in what anyone else has to say. It's as if you're signaling that you believe your accomplishments are more important than theirs, or worse, that you're trying to measure up to them in some unspoken competition. Here's the thing, people generally don't respect others because of how much they talk about their successes. Respect isn't about constant boasting. It's about quiet confidence. Stoicism teaches us that true success isn't about outward recognition or validation, it's about inner growth and living according to our values. If you're constantly looking for external praise, you're missing the point. Stoics would say that we should be humble in our accomplishments and not need constant recognition to validate our worth. It's the quiet achievers, the ones who don't need to make a spectacle of their success, that earn genuine respect. Now, let's flip it. Talking excessively about your problems. This is the other side of the coin, and it can be just as draining. It's natural to have struggles, and sometimes we just need to vent. But if your every conversation revolves around how tough things are, how much you're suffering, or how much you've been wronged, people can start to feel like they're stuck in a never-ending cycle of negativity. It's exhausting, and after a while, people may begin to distance themselves because they feel like they're always stuck in the role of your emotional support. It's important to recognize that, while it's good to talk about your issues, overloading others with your problems can create a toxic atmosphere where no one wants to engage. From a Stoic perspective, constant venting or complaining is a sign that you're not in control of your emotions. Stoicism is all about mastering your inner state, finding peace no matter what's happening outside of you. When you talk excessively about your problems, you're essentially giving away your power. You're allowing external circumstances to dictate your mood, your conversations, and your life. Stoics would encourage you to take responsibility for your own feelings and to confront your challenges with resilience and composure. Instead of constantly talking about how hard things are, find ways to approach those problems with a sense of calm, detachment, and clarity. The key here is moderation. Nobody likes a bragger, but no one enjoys a perpetual complainer either. You don't have to keep your achievements or struggles hidden, but the constant need to talk about them often signals that you're looking for validation or sympathy. It's important to have a sense of balance and self-awareness. If your conversations always revolve around you, it can create an imbalance in relationships. People want to feel heard, too. If all you're doing is talking about yourself, your wins or your woes, it makes it harder for others to connect with you on a deeper level. Now, you might be thinking, but what if my problems are serious? What if I really need to talk about my achievements because I've worked hard for them? And that's fair. There's absolutely a time and place for sharing your triumphs and your struggles. But the key is to do it in a way that respects the people around you. Share your achievements when it's appropriate and with humility, not to overshadow others or make them feel inferior. And when you talk about your problems, remember that it's okay to be vulnerable, but don't let it become your only narrative. Find ways to take action, solve the issues, and move forward, rather than dwelling on them for too long. At the end of the day, respect is earned by being present for others, listening to their stories, and not constantly seeking attention or sympathy. Stoics believed in living with dignity, in not needing validation from the outside world. If you can master the art of talking less about your own achievements and problems and instead focus on listening, empathizing, and contributing to conversations in a meaningful way, you'll find that you not only earn respect but also build stronger, more genuine relationships. So, next time you feel the urge to talk about yourself too much, take a moment to step back. Ask yourself, what am I really hoping to get out of this conversation? Is it about connecting, or is it about seeking approval? The answer might just change the way you approach your interactions. Number 8, ignoring or dismissing others' opinions or feelings. Let's talk about something that's all too common: ignoring or dismissing others' opinions or feelings. It's a habit that can sneak up on us, especially when we're wrapped up in our own thoughts, goals, or world. But the thing is, when you do this, it doesn't just hurt the other person. It slowly chips away at the respect people have for you, and it can even make you seem completely out of touch with reality. And this, my friend, is where Stoic philosophy can be a game changer. It teaches us the value of understanding, empathy, and temperance, especially when it comes to dealing with others. First off, think about the last time someone tried to share something personal with you, maybe something they cared about, and you weren't really listening. Maybe you nodded, said but deep down, your mind was elsewhere. Maybe you were thinking about something more important to you or just didn't see the value in their point of view. You brushed it off, didn't take it seriously. The person you were talking to probably noticed, didn't they? It's not just about what you say, it's about what you don't say, and what you don't show. And even if you didn't say a word, the message still got across loud and clear: I don't care about your feelings or your opinion. Now, I get it, sometimes we're all busy, overwhelmed, or just not in the mood to deal with someone's feelings. But here's the thing: dismissing someone's opinion or ignoring their emotions is, in many ways, a sign of arrogance. It's almost like saying, what I think is more important than what you feel or believe. And when you do that, you're essentially telling people they don't matter, or that their experiences are irrelevant. That's a pretty disrespectful message, don't you think? Stoicism, on the other hand, teaches us the opposite. It's all about understanding the perspectives of others, even when they're different from your own. Stoics believe that true wisdom comes from being open to other people's ideas and experiences. It's about recognizing that everyone's feelings are valid, even if you don't agree with them. In the Stoic world, empathy isn't a weakness, it's a strength. It's a reminder that we're all human, struggling in our own ways, and it's our duty to listen, to consider, and to try to understand, not dismiss. When you ignore or dismiss someone, it's a sign that you lack the self-awareness and emotional intelligence to connect with them. People can tell when you're not fully present. You might say the right things, I understand or I hear you, but if your body language or attitude says otherwise, it's a dead giveaway. People might start to wonder if you actually care about their thoughts, or if you're just pretending to. And over time, this disconnect can erode any sense of respect they had for you. If someone feels like you never truly listen, they're not going to trust you, they're not going to value you, and they might even start tuning you out completely. No one wants to feel invisible or unimportant, especially when they're sharing something that matters to them. Think about the emotional impact of dismissing someone. It doesn't just hurt their pride, it can leave them feeling invalidated and small. And that's something that lingers. Even if you don't see the harm in brushing off their opinions, to them, it can feel like you're telling them their voice doesn't matter. And that's not just disrespectful, it's damaging to the relationship. Trust gets broken, and once that's gone, it's incredibly hard to rebuild. On the flip side, when you show genuine interest in someone's opinion or feelings, even if you don't agree with them, you're building respect. You're saying, I see you. I hear you. Your experience matters. And that's not just an act of kindness, it's a sign of emotional maturity. It shows that you're capable of putting your own ego aside long enough to engage with another person's perspective. And that's powerful. It might not always be easy, especially when you feel like your own views are stronger or more important, but making space for others to be heard is something that brings people together, not drives them apart. In the Stoic tradition, understanding others is a way to cultivate patience and tolerance. It's not just about agreeing with people all the time, it's about recognizing that everyone is walking their own path, struggling with their own challenges. And just because their feelings or opinions don't match yours doesn't make them less valuable. It makes them human, just like you. So, the next time you're in a conversation and someone's sharing something with you, take a moment. Slow down. Look them in the eye, listen fully, and give them the space they deserve. That simple act will make a world of difference in how they perceive you, and in how you relate to the world around you. Number 9. Neglecting self-discipline and personal growth. Neglecting self-discipline and personal growth is like planting seeds in a garden and then never bothering to water them. Sure, you've got potential, but without the effort to nurture it, you're just letting it wither away. This habit, though often overlooked, can be one of the most damaging when it comes to how people perceive you. When you don't take responsibility for your own growth or stick to any kind of self-discipline, it sends a clear message to those around you: I'm not serious. We all have dreams, aspirations, and the potential to be more than what we are right now. But here's the catch: potential doesn't mean a thing if you're not willing to put in the hard work. Self-discipline is the bridge between where you are and where you want to be. It's about showing up for yourself even when it's tough, staying consistent when the motivation fades, and doing the things that push you forward, even when it's easier to sit back and do nothing. When you neglect self-discipline, you're essentially telling people that you lack control over your own life. It's easy to get distracted, to take the path of least resistance, but the truth is, no one respects someone who can't show up for themselves. Whether it's something small, like not following through on a commitment, or something bigger, like failing to improve your skills, the lack of personal discipline screams, I'm not serious about my future. And that lack of seriousness translates directly into a lack of respect from others. Why would anyone take you seriously if you don't even take yourself seriously? And personal growth, let's not forget that one. The Stoics teach us that the pursuit of self-improvement is one of the highest goals in life. It's not just about getting better at your job or looking better physically, it's about becoming a better version of yourself, mentally, emotionally, and spiritually. Neglecting personal growth isn't just stagnation, it's a quiet form of self-sabotage. You might be comfortable with where you are right now, but the world doesn't stand still, and neither should you. If you're not actively working on yourself, whether through learning, self-reflection, or challenging yourself in some way, then you're not just staying the same. You're falling behind. Personal growth means embracing discomfort. It's about choosing the difficult path of learning over the comfort of ignorance. It's about pushing yourself when everything in your body wants to give up. And this is where the power of self-discipline comes into play. Personal growth isn't just going to happen by accident. It requires daily effort, intentional action, and a commitment to evolving. If you're skipping out on that, people notice. It's hard to respect someone who's content to stay stagnant, someone who shows no desire to grow or improve. Why would anyone want to follow your lead if you're not even trying to improve your own life? The problem with neglecting self-discipline and growth is that it catches up with you. Eventually, people start to see you as someone who talks a good game but doesn't back it up. You might say all the right things, but if your actions don't align with your words, the respect people have for you starts to fade. And that's the kicker. In the end, it's the lack of integrity between what you say you'll do and what you actually do that erodes trust. If you can't even show up for your own self-improvement, how can anyone expect you to show up for them? But here's the thing, this isn't just about how others perceive you. It's about how you see yourself. The longer you neglect self-discipline and growth, the more you start to believe that this is all you're capable of. you stop believing in your own potential. And that's a dangerous place to be. The Stoics believed in the power of the mind, the ability to shape our reality through our choices. If you aren't actively improving yourself, you're not just letting others down, you're letting yourself down too. The fix? It's simple, but not easy. Start by holding yourself accountable. Break down your goals into manageable steps, and follow through on them even when you don't feel like it. Focus on building routines that push you toward growth. Seek discomfort, because growth never happens in your comfort zone. The process won't always be glamorous, but the results? They speak for themselves. When you develop the discipline to improve yourself consistently, you'll find that people will start to respect you, not just because of what you can do, but because of who you are becoming. And that's the most powerful form of respect you can earn. Number 10. Failing to keep your word. Failing to keep your word. This might sound like something small, almost insignificant. But, in reality, it's one of the most damaging things you can do, not just to others, but to yourself. When you say you're going to do something and you don't follow through, you're not just breaking promises to others. You're breaking trust. And once trust is broken, it's incredibly hard to repair. The worst part is that we often don't realize how much damage we're doing in the moment, until it's too late. Think about this: when you promise something, you're essentially making a contract. You're telling someone, "I will do this for you, and you can rely on me." But when you don't keep your word, what message does that send? It tells the other person that you're unreliable, that they can't count on you. And here's the kicker: it doesn't matter if you had a good reason for not following through. The fact is, you failed. And people will remember that. They'll start to wonder, can I trust them with anything? And once that doubt creeps in, it lingers. It's hard to get back to a place of trust when you've let someone down. Now, from a Stoic perspective, this is a big deal. Stoicism is all about living with integrity, being true to your word, and acting in accordance with your values. The Stoics understood that the foundation of a well-lived life is not just about external success, it's about developing inner strength and character. When you fail to keep your word, you're undermining that inner strength. You're telling yourself, it's okay to let others down. But it's not. When you consistently fail to follow through, you're weakening your own character, and that's something that can have long-term consequences on your self-respect. It's easy to see how failing to keep your word can damage your relationships. People might stop trusting you, stop asking for your help, or even stop believing in your capabilities. But the truth is, it's even worse for you. Each time you break a promise, you weaken your own integrity. You start to chip away at your sense of self. And over time, this becomes a pattern. You might find yourself making excuses for why you didn't keep your word or justifying your actions. But deep down, you'll know that you're not the person you want to be. And that feeling eats away at your peace of mind. The Stoics would argue that the real tragedy here is that breaking your word not only harms your relationships with others, but it also harms your relationship with yourself. Marcus Aurelius, one of the most well-known Stoic philosophers, said, "The best revenge is to be unlike him who performed the injury." In other words, the best way to deal with the consequences of breaking your word is to not repeat the mistake. Don't just apologize, do better. Become someone who can be trusted, someone whose actions align with their words. One of the key tenets of Stoicism is the idea of personal responsibility. The Stoics believed that you should take full responsibility for your actions, and that includes keeping your word. It's not enough to say, "I meant well" or "I had a good reason for not following through." The Stoic approach is to own up to your mistakes, learn from them, and take the necessary steps to make sure it doesn't happen again. When you keep your word, you're taking responsibility for your actions and showing that you're someone who can be relied upon. That's a mark of character, and that's something people respect. At the end of the day, Keeping your word is a reflection of who you are. It's not about making promises to look good or impress others. It's about being the kind of person who values honesty, integrity, and trust. The more you honor your commitments, the more you build your own self-respect. And that, in turn, helps you earn the respect of others. If you want to be someone people respect, if you want to build strong, lasting relationships, you need to make a habit of keeping your word. It might not always be easy, sometimes life gets in the way, and circumstances change. But that doesn't mean you should abandon your promises. Instead, find a way to make it right. Be upfront if you can't follow through and offer a solution. The act of owning up to your mistakes and correcting them shows maturity, responsibility, and strength, qualities that everyone respects. So, next time you make a promise, think carefully before you speak. Your word is your bond, and the way you honor that bond speaks volumes about the person you are. When you keep your word, you not only strengthen your relationships with others but also build the kind of character that you can be proud of. And in the end, that's the kind of respect that matters most. Respect starts with the habits you choose. If this video helped you spot and break the habits that hold you back, hit like, share it to inspire others, and subscribe for more Stoic wisdom. Let's build a life worthy of respect, together.